Chapter 2464. It sounded like thunder, but the thunder was 100 times more powerful than the thunder itself. The 8 great domains were instantly shattered and returned to their original forms. The Xian Dao masters looked up, and their pupils constricted. The emptiness above their heads parted like the clouds to reveal the moon, revealing a dense mass of chains. They were entwined with each other, covering the entire sky. The path masters present were familiar with those chains. They were the heavenly way. The entire world existed under the order of the heavenly way. However, under normal circumstances, the heavenly way couldn't see it at all. Only someone like Prince Xiaoyao could remove the fog and allow the heavenly way to manifest itself. No wonder Yining was able to deceive the heavens by making a false oath and not be punished by the heavenly way. It turns out that Prince Xiaoyao was secretly helping him. Someone finally understood that what Su Yu said was true. With the Saint Mountain secretly controlling the heavenly way, Yining would not be punished by the heavenly way even if he made 100 or 1,000 false oaths. 10,000 paths devour. Prince Xiaoyao took a deep breath and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He spoke in a mysterious language that even Su Yu did not understand. The countless chains of the Great Way at the end of the sky were wriggling like long-coiled snakes. With a creaking sound, the chains of the Great Way all turned into a pitch-black brilliance and kept crashing down. Each of them was comparable to a full-force blow from a Xian Dao master. At this moment, there were more than 1,000 chains of the Great Way that were crashing down. Who among the heroes of the outside world could withstand such a blow? Su Yu's eyes narrowed. He stepped on the 8th Supreme Realm. Not only did he not retreat, but he also charged forward to fight the Great Way. The 8th Supreme Realm seemed to sense the suppression of the Great Way and kept circulating. Time, space, soul, life, death, destiny, reincarnation, and creation. The 8 strongest realms in the world burst forth with divine light that covered the sky. From afar, Su Yu turned into an 8-colored arrow and broke through the suppression of the Great Way. So what if you are a Great Way? You should be killed for helping the wicked. Su Yu roared. The arrow that he had turned into collided with the Great Way that was sweeping down. Boom! The deafening sound swept out in all directions, shattering the 180 mountains that were about to melt yet hadn't. Everyone looked at the sky in shock, but they saw the thousands of great Daos and the 8 supreme domains frozen in midair, and no one could do anything to the other. He can actually fight against the Son of Heaven's clone. Many of the Xian Dao masters cried out in surprise. They finally believed that Su Yu had killed the Son of Heaven's clone. Emperor Xiaoyao humphed coldly, "Is that all you have?" When he finished, he pointed to the sky with one hand and pointed to the ground with the other. Under the primal chaos, I am the only one. Rumble, at the peak of the sky, tens of thousands of chains of the great path rained down like a storm. The entire world whimpered as if it couldn't bear the weight, as if it couldn't bear the pressure of so many great Daos. The tens of thousands of chains of the Grand Tao hadn't even smashed down when the entire profound Tao Palace started to collapse and transform into pieces of shattered space. They were like leaves that were swept away in a storm and vanished without a trace. Su Yu felt pressured, but he was not afraid. Divine Cauldron, come! Roar! 9 sky-shaking dragon roars tore through time and space, sweeping over. The divine 9-dragon cauldron returned to Su Yu's palm, giving up suppressing the deputy palace master. Su Yu didn't say a word. He pressed the palm on the divine 9-dragon cauldron and shouted, "Suppress the heaven and earth. Go!" The divine 9-dragon cauldron hummed and shook violently, turning into a giant cauldron. With the support of the 8 great domains, it went up against the sky and suppressed all Daos. Bang! 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 Countless booms and collisions rang out one after another, as if they were world-ending thunderbolts that could split the heavens and earth apart. The divine 9-dragon cauldron was absolutely invincible. It went up against the sky, crushing all the great path chains along the way, smashing them into pieces and falling to the earth. The great path was damaged, and the order of the world, time and space. All the flowers and trees in the entire outer region began to wither without warning. Countless spiritual minds and mountains shrank in a short time. The 4 seasons of the world were abnormal. A moment ago, it was the coldest winter, but in the blink of an eye, it was the scorching sun. The martial artists felt it most clearly. All kinds of energy needed for their training disappeared rapidly, as if a huge gap had appeared in the world, and all the energy was being swallowed up. The scenes happened one after another. As more and more great path chains were crushed, the disorder of the world became more and more serious. Seeing that he couldn't suppress a mere ant, Xiaoyao, son of heaven, was furious. All the great path, listen to my command, destroy the defiant heaven. Clatter! All the great path chains in the sky crashed down at this moment. Many Xian Dao masters stared at this scene, their hearts in their throats. How was this still a battle? It was clearly Su Yu alone against the entire heavenly law. How could Su Yu resist the endless chains of the great path? Ant, accept your fate. If the emperor wants you dead, you won't live for more than an hour. Xiaoyao, son of heaven, summoned the great path of heaven with his arms to suppress Su Yu. Seeing that he was about to be crushed by the entire heavenly law, Su Yu's eyes were full of defiance. I have never believed in the so-called fate in my life. Fate can be changed. Su Yu shouted, expressing the inner thoughts of the world's cultivators. The cultivators of my generation have their lives in my hands, not in heaven. As he shouted, Su Yu took out the fruit stone of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. Go! In Su Yu's hand, the stone turned into a stream of light and rushed into the great path. All the great paths that were hit by the stone were strangely absorbed by the stone, leaving no residue. As it swept across, hundreds of the great paths were strangely absorbed. Seeing this object, Xiaoyao, son of heaven's face changed dramatically. You still have this thing that doesn't belong to you. Obviously, this object was completely beyond Xiaoyao, son of heaven's expectation. 10,000 streams returned to the ocean. Su Yu seized every available opportunity to display the space domain, forcibly gathering the great path chains that were crashing down from the sky right above the stone. In an instant, thousands of great paths were absorbed by the stone. No matter how many great path chains crashed down, they couldn't escape the absorption of the stone. In just 10 breaths, the great paths of heaven had disappeared, all swallowed up without leaving a trace. The result of losing the great paths in the extraterrestrial lands was destruction. Without the great paths, the extraterrestrial lands lost the maintenance of order and couldn't withstand the pressure of the formation from the 8-star civilizations. The vast and boundless ancient formation rumbled down at a speed visible to the naked eye. Once it fell completely, all the civilizations in the void would be crushed into pieces. By then, the extraterrestrial lands would really be a lifeless land of death. All the people that Su Yu was familiar with in this place would die, and become dust in the world. Su Yu's eyes turned cold, and he shouted, "Unite the 8 sides and rebuild the heavenly law." Walala, the 8 great domains soared to the highest point of the heaven and earth, turning into a vast galaxy that enveloped all corners of the extraterrestrial lands. The 8 great supreme domains were the most important great paths among the great paths. Chapter 2465. The 8 great supreme realms soared into the sky, each turning into a giant pillar that connected heaven and earth, supporting a corner of the world. There was a pillar of light in each of the 8 directions. The collapsing ancient formation, after shaking violently for a while, was finally successfully supported. Although the destruction of the other great paths still caused the outer space to lose its balance, it could still be maintained for the time being. The battle between the two had reached the level of destroying the outer space, frightening all the Xian Dao masters who were watching the battle. This was Su Yu's true strength. When he crushed the deputy palace master, he did not use his full strength, did he? Prince Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. He never expected Su Yu to improve so quickly. Last time, when the second clone attacked, Su Yu, who did not have the holy mortal body, was weaker than an ant. He could be killed with a glance. But now? Su Yu's strength was so strong that he could compete with him. Ant, don't celebrate too early. I was just warming up with you. Prince Xiaoyao opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of 9-colored blood. It condensed into a 9-colored ruler in the air. The ruler exuded a terrifying power that was far greater than the divine 9-dragon cauldron. As soon as the 9-colored ruler appeared, the 8 great supreme realm that supported the outer space shook violently. Even the divine 9-dragon cauldron was restless. For the first time, the 9 dragons on it had developed a sense of fear, wailing in unison. At the same time, the entire outer space was shaking violently. The civilizations were bouncing up and down like dust in an earthquake. Mountains were falling and the earth was cracking in the civilizations. It was like doomsday in the 4 regions. Su Yu stared at the 9-colored ruler. His heart was beating wildly, and he felt fear from the bottom of his heart. What was that? For you, I did not hesitate to use a wisp of the Emperor's ruler's essence to refine it into a replica of the Emperor's ruler for me, just in case. Holding the replica of the Emperor's ruler in his hand, Prince Xiaoyao said mockingly, "If you had the holy mortal body, you might be able to resist it. Since you don't, humph, then you can say goodbye to this world forever." Why didn't Prince Xiaoyao take out the Emperor's ruler at the beginning of the battle? He had been testing Su Yu secretly to see if he was really unable to use the holy mortal body. After a series of battles, he was sure that Su Yu's oil lamp had withered and he could no longer use his holy mortal body. Hence, he used his trump card to kill Su Yu. Die! Emperor Xiaoyao held the ruler in his hand and slashed down from the sky. Su Yu saw with his own eyes that the entire outer region was cut open by the ruler. At the moment when it was sliced open, Su Yu vaguely saw a huge lighthouse shining brightly through the crack, illuminating the great world that he had never seen before. With just a single foot, the outer realms were split apart. Su Yu only had the body of the Xian Dao master. So, how could he block such a powerful attack? At this critical moment, Su Yu clenched his teeth. The Star River under his feet was like a waterfall, sweeping him back to 1/10 of the region in an instant. However, even though he had escaped so far away, he was still struck by that 1-foot strike. He had no choice but to retreat 10 times in a row until he reached the southernmost part of the southern region. Only then did he barely avoid the power of the Emperor's ruler. A huge crack that ran through the entire southern region appeared before Su Yu's eyes in a shocking manner. His position happened to be at the end of the crack. If he had retreated a little later, he would have ended up like the void, cut into pieces. Haha, don't run. Emperor Xiaoyao was 1 region away. He held the Emperor's ruler in his hand and sneered. The game has just begun. Swish. Emperor Xiaoyao galloped over. His speed was no less than Su Yu's, who had mastered the space domain. Overnight, he had closed the distance by 1/10. Su Yu did not dare to be careless. He quickly retreated and put some distance between them. Almost at the moment when he retreated, the Emperor's ruler spoke again. Another piece of the outer region was cut open, and the end of the crack almost swallowed Su Yu. The two of them chased each other around the outer region. Huge cracks appeared one after another. Looking up, the outer region was like a ragged sack that was about to be torn apart. In the depths of the world, there was an unbearable creaking sound. Although the 8 light pillars could still support the outer region itself had been torn apart by the Emperor's ruler and was about to be destroyed. The two of them chased each other between heaven and earth. In a flash, several months had passed. The entire outer region was in extreme turmoil. Fortunately, because of the appearance of a large number of cracks, the ancient formation that blocked the outer region had a large number of loopholes. This made countless strong men ecstatic. They did their best to bring the entire civilization out of the outer region and successfully sneak into the 8-star civilization. For them, The battle between Su Yu and Emperor Xiaoyao was not a disaster. Instead, it was a great opportunity that they could not ask for in a million lifetimes. Without the appearance of a large number of cracks, they would not have the opportunity to enter the 8-star civilization even after several reincarnations. For a time, there was a large-scale migration. Meanwhile, the battle between Su Yu and Emperor Xiaoyao was still ongoing. It looked like they were going to destroy the outer region. Su Yu, stop running. It's useless. Emperor Xiaoyao chased after him and said coldly, if I don't kill you, I will not stop. Even if you run into the 8-star civilization, it will be useless. Su Yu's eyes were filled with an intense cold light, and the Star River flowed under his feet. When he reappeared, he was in the East region, in front of a graveyard filled with evil energy. The Evil Master Graveyard. After the evil Sanren had extracted most of the evil souls from the tomb, the evil energy had weakened significantly. However, the presence of the evil ancestor Ancient God's cenotaph allowed the evil energy to continue to run wild. With the evil Sanren's ability, he had only taken away the remnant souls of the 4 Ancient Gods' cenotaphs. The seals of the Ancient Gods' cenotaphs were too strong, and he could not do anything about it. Su Yu flew to the evil ancestor's graveyard. The 8 great domains arrived at the same time, breaking all the seals of the 4 Ancient Gods' cenotaph. Then, with a flick of his finger, the 4 ancient tombs all exploded. In the ancient tomb of the ancient god Jin Xian, an ancient god's broken bone had been obtained by Su Yu, so it was empty. In the tombs of the evil ancestor Ancient God, the golden wing Ancient God, and the demon ancestor, there were corresponding burial items. Among the tombs of the evil ancestor Ancient God, the golden wing Ancient God, and the demon ancestor, there was a crown of evil energy. That was the crown worn by the evil ancestor Ancient God when he was alive, and it had accumulated the evil energy of his life. In the ancient tomb of the golden wing Ancient God, there was the remains of a bird. This was the favorite spiritual pet of the golden wing Ancient God when he was alive. As a replacement, it was buried in the golden wing Ancient God's cenotaph. In the ancient tomb of the last demon ancestor Ancient God, there was a broken demonic sword. Although the demonic sword was not the doctrine artifact of the demon ancestor Ancient God, it was something he used all year round, and it contained the unparalleled divine power of the demon ancestor Ancient God. Rise. Su Yu made a grabbing motion in the air, and the 3 items flew into his palm. He placed the evil saint crown near the graveyard and concealed its scent, then continued to retreat. Chapter 2466. Evil Sovereign Crown Explode. How powerful would the self-destruction of an ancient god's crown be? A boundless evil aura that seemed capable of destroying the entire eastern region burst out. Emperor Xiaoyao raised his ruler to block. The powerful 9-colored light swept away most of the evil qi, but there was still a portion of the evil qi that invaded his body. With a miserable groan, Xiaoyao Son of Heaven's body instantly turned into a bloody mess. Even a piece of his arm was eroded. Feather. Xiaoyao Son of Heaven covered his broken arm. As he recovered, he chased after Xiaoyao at a high speed. His eyes were filled with intense murderous intent. Su Yu seemed to have heard it, and he released the remains of the golden bird in his hands without hesitation. At the same time, he used his soul domain to create a soul within the wreckage. Chirp, along with a shrill bone chime, the remains of the small bird crossed an entire region and arrived in front of the Xiaoyao Emperor at an unbelievably fast speed. The sharp beak touched Emperor Xiaoyao's head. Emperor Xiaoyao was prepared and blocked it with the ruler. Ding! With a slight cracking sound, the ruler was struck by the remains of the little bird, and a crack appeared on the ruler. Emperor Xiaoyao was heartbroken. His face was twisted with anger. Go to hell! The ruler instantly slashed down, crushing the remains of the bird that was pecking at him again. Die, ant! The emperor ruler slashed down once again, creating a long crack that reached Su Yu. Suyu did not even turn his head. He held the broken demonic sword in his hand and slashed it in the opposite direction. In an instant, the heavenly demon roared angrily, and an incomparably black crescent moon demonic blade shadow pierced through the entire domain. The cracks on the ruler overlapped with the shadow of the demonic saber. The two of them destroyed each other, and the force field that erupted from them shattered Emperor Xiaoyao, who was caught off guard. Streaks of 9-colored blood flowed from the wound. Emperor Xiaoyao's face was gloomy. Damn the outer regions, damn the ancient gods! The outer realm was a mystical place with too many unexplainable secrets. For example, why would an ancient god have a cenotaph here? Filled with murderous intent, Emperor Xiaoyao continued his pursuit. The star river under Su Yu's feet was like a waterfall. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the glaze ancient cave of the colored glaze civilization. After mastering the 8 great domains, Su Yu's vision was no longer the same as before. He could see through the interior of the glazed ancient cave with a single glance. 3 extremely powerful seals sealed the interior of the glazed ancient cave layer by layer. In the innermost seal, 3 creatures with powerful auras were staring out of the seal and looking at him. There seems to be an incredible existence outside. Insect Ancestor said with some bewilderment. It can't be that existence from back then, right? Snake Ancestor had a lingering fear in his heart. Back then, it was the human ancestor who was passing by who noticed their existence and stopped to size them up, scaring them half to death. Now that Suyu was sizing them up, he attracted their attention. I don't think so. This person isn't as strong as the last one, Ancestor Bone said with certainty. However, there was a smear of doubt in his eyes. However, why is this person's aura vaguely familiar? While they were deep in thought, Suyu, who was holding the demonic knife, swung it horizontally. Boom! The seal that had sealed the 3 patriarchs for tens of thousands of years shattered with a loud bang. The third forefather stood on the bridge and stared blankly at the broken seal, unable to believe his eyes. Such a powerful seal was actually broken by a saber strike. When he saw the face of the person who broke the seal, the third forefather's face changed drastically. It's you, human? They couldn't believe that the weak human who was controlled by them was actually this powerful and invincible existence in front of them. Suyu stood in midair and stared at the third forefather. He shook his head slightly. Too weak. In the past, he always felt that the third forefather's strength was shocking. However, looking at his current realm, the third forefather's strength couldn't even be called an ancestor. At least, they couldn't be compared with the human ancestor. The reason for this should be that they had been sealed for such a long period of time. Most of their cultivation had already been lost. Their peak strength should be far superior to the second clone of Xiaoyao, son of heaven. Human, how dare you come back? Insect Ancestor scolded fiercely. His eyes were filled with hatred. How could he forget the grudge of losing his finger? Ancestor Bone and Snake Ancestor also revealed murderous intentions. If it wasn't for this person, they would have broken the seal long ago. You're on your own now. However, Suyu didn't bother with them at all. Instead, he casually said something that seemed inexplicable to them, then left alone. Insect Ancestor's eyes were cold. Where do you think you're going? He was about to chase after Suyu. However, at this moment, a horrifying ruler's shadow pierced through the sky and came crashing down. Unfortunately, because the third forefather was close to Suyu, he was also within the range of the strike. The Emperor's ruler. The third forefather's pupils shrank and he was frightened. The ruler's shadow crashed down. The third forefather didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly tried to resist it. Although their cultivation was far from their peak, their heavenly realm and Tao artifacts were not reduced in the slightest. Under the joint efforts of the third forefather, they managed to resist the ruler's shadow. Insect Ancestor said with grief and indignation, "We have been sealed for tens of thousands of years and lost all our cultivation. Today, we just got out of the seal and were discovered by the Emperor of the Holy Mountain. He wants to kill us all. Brothers, do you still want to live?" Snake Ancestor and Bone Ancestor felt extremely aggrieved. They didn't expect the Holy Mountain to be so relentless. "Fight!" The third forefather roared and fought together. As the ruler's shadow crashed down one after another, the third forefather was powerless. When Xiaoyao, son of heaven, arrived, he looked at the third forefather disdainfully. "I was wondering who was ruining my plans. Turns out it's you three little bugs." In fact, Xiaoyao, son of heaven, had long discovered the existence of the three forefathers. However, hunting down Su Yu was the most important matter at hand. Hence, he could not be bothered to look for trouble with them. He didn't expect that at the critical moment when he was hunting Su Yu, the third ancestor would dare to stop him. They really didn't know how to spell the word death. Die! With an angry roar, the ruler shadow of Emperor Xiaoyao slashed down from a close distance. Three miserable groans were heard. Be it insect ancestor, ancestor bone, or ancestor snake, all of them lost their lives on the spot. Not even their remains were left behind. Xiaoyao, son of heaven, stared in Su Yu's direction from afar and roared furiously, "Let's see where you can run to." Although the outer realm was vast, there was no place for him to stay. Su Yu didn't say a word as he used the space domain to constantly leap into the outer space. After 10 days and 10 nights of pursuit, Su Yu crossed the entire region and arrived at the deepest part of the western region. That was Su Yu's first stop in the outer realm, the Sea of Constellations. And the reason why he appeared in the Sea of Constellations was because a colossus that had existed since the beginning of the era resided in the vicinity of the Sea of Constellations, Tao Tai. As Su Yu surveyed his surroundings, he could clearly see a gigantic pitch-black silhouette amidst the nothingness that was difficult to see with the naked eye. "Don't pretend to be asleep," Su Yu said coldly. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was like a thunderclap. Buzz, the nothingness trembled. In the silhouette of the black silhouette, a gigantic round ball comparable to a 5-star civilization suddenly appeared. That was the Eye of Tao Tai. "Human, are you offering yourself to me to devour?" The gigantic eye stared at the ice crystal crown on Su Yu's forehead. Su Yu could feel that the Eye of Tao Tai under the crown was squirming restlessly. Chapter 2467. Tao Tais were destined to devour each other and obtain each other's strength. The Tao Tai in front of him was the ancestor of Tao Tais, who had lived since the beginning of the era. He had devoured many of his own kind throughout his life. Su Yu came with the Eye of Tao Tai and was mistaken as one of his own kind. "If you have the ability to do so," Su Yu said calmly, standing in front of the Tao Tai without any fear. The giant eye continued to stare at Su Yu for a long time before it blinked. "Haha, you are indeed the descendant of the ancient god Jiulong. You really surprise me," the Tao Tai said in a hoarse voice. "I used to think you would die in the hands of the Son of Heaven, like some of the descendants of the ancient god. I didn't expect that not only did you not die, but you also successfully absorbed the 8 flames of the way and became the second master of the 8 great domains in history." Those who didn't know the nature of the Tao Tai would think that he would give it some benefit. "However, you may not know that my relationship with the ancient god Jiulong is not very friendly." The Taoya's words suddenly became fierce. "You were chased by the Son of Heaven Xiaoyao. You could have run anywhere, but you chose to run to me. You are seeking death." The huge eye slowly turned into a black whirlpool. The surrounding nebulae flowed into the black whirlpool at an extremely fast speed. That was the mature Eye of Tao Tai. It could devour heaven and earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the galaxy. Su Yu also felt the powerful and extraordinary devouring power. However, he stood still and said indifferently, "I know. That's why I came all the way here to give you a big gift." As he spoke, the demon venerable blade in his hand turned into an unparalleled knife energy and slashed at the huge body of the Tao Tai. Clang! The sound of metal colliding reverberated through the nebulae. The vague outline of the Taotai could be seen clearly. The image of a mighty Taotai with 3 heads and 6 arms did not exist in Su Yu's imagination. What was reflected in front of him was a huge object made up of various cosmic impurities and space fragments. Of the entire body, only that I was alive. The rest of the body was just a temporary assembly. As expected, as the Taotai ancestor, you couldn't control your Taoya's eyes a long time ago and devoured your enormous body, Su Yu said with a grave look in his eyes. To be exact, more than half of the Taoya's body had been devoured. The head and half of the stomach were still there. The rest were all devoured. After the pitch-black devouring vortex opened, his body indeed showed signs of being devoured. So what if they found out? Before I devour myself, it will be enough to devour everything, the Taotai said coldly, increasing its devouring power. However, at this moment, a ruler shadow that traversed the Milky Way swept over with a rumble. Su Yu was already prepared. He activated the space field beneath his feet and escaped in an instant. But the Taoya's body was huge, not to mention that it was difficult to move. It was also caught off guard. How could it expect that there would be an attack from the heavens? His body was immediately hit by the ruler. Ah! Human, you plotted against me. Taotai instantly understood why Su Yu had dared to approach him. He was borrowing the power of Emperor Xiao Yao to kill him. Now that the era was about to restart, an ancestral existence like the Taotai was also a target of the Holy Mountain. It was not a problem for Emperor Xiao Yao to kill Taotai while chasing after Su Yu. In the midst of the Taoya's roar, he quickly closed his eyes and roared angrily, "Human, I swear I will not give up." Boom! His huge body slammed forward, smashing the ancient formation that sealed off the outer space. Then, with a whistling sound, he hurriedly escaped. Soon after, Emperor Xiao Yao caught up. Looking at the direction in which the Taotai had escaped, he said coldly, "You bastard, you escaped fast." Then, he raised his eyes and looked at Su Yu. What surprised him was that Su Yu did not escape again. Instead, he stood there, as if waiting for Emperor Xiao Yao to come. "Aunt, you are not running anymore? Are you resigned to your fate?" Emperor Xiao Yao strode forward and chased after him, stopping thousands of miles away. At such a short distance, once the ruler was activated, Su Yu's space field would be useless no matter how proficient he was. He would die under the ruler. Su Yu stood on the double-star island in the sea of constellations with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were filled with nostalgia. When he escaped from the god realm of the 9 Dragons Valley, this was where he appeared. He disguised himself as the son of the Shui family and mingled in Tai Chu until today. Everything returned to the place where it all started again. Was this what it meant? "Do you think I am running away?" Su Yu asked calmly. In his open left eye there was no sign of panic. Instead, it was filled with calmness. His calmness slightly surprised Emperor Xiao Yao. In such a long battle, if Su Yu had a trump card, he would have used it long ago. Why would he be chased for thousands of miles? Was he trying to play the empty fort? "Don't try to be mysterious here." Emperor Xiao Yao raised the ruler and said coldly, "I will take your life." Su Yu had no intention of escaping anymore. He murmured softly, "The evil master cemetery, the 3 ancestors of the Glaze ancient cave, and the Taotai, the 3 greatest dangers of the outer space, have all been destroyed? If so, I can leave with peace of mind." Hearing this, Emperor Xiao Yao narrowed his eyes slightly. Why did Su Yu sound like he was using him to destroy those dangerous existences? But was that possible? As Su Yu was being hunted, he was surrounded by danger several times. He only managed to escape by a hair's breadth. Under such dangerous circumstances, how could he still be in the mood to plot? Or could it be that from the moment Su Yu attacked the Xiandao Palace, everything had been within Su Yu's calculations? In fact, that was indeed the case. Before killing Xie Sanren, Su Yu had already thought about his future path. One day, he would have to leave the outer space and go to an 8-star civilization. But if he went, who would take care of the many old friends in the outer space? With his reputation, ordinary forces would not dare to provoke them. But there were still some dangerous existences in the outer space that he could not do anything about. One was the evil master cemetery. As long as the cemetery existed, there would be a day when the evil energy would be used and released. Just like the day when a mysterious elder tried to release all the evil bones. The second was the third ancestor in the Glaze ancient cave. From Su Yu's interactions, the third ancestor was ruthless and disregarded the lives of living creatures. If they were to escape and wreak havoc in the outer space, who could stop them? The third was the Taotai. Its existence was the greatest threat. Even the Xian Dao Palace could not deal with these existences. Therefore, Su Yu wanted to completely destroy the 3 great dangers before he left. This way, he could ensure the outer space's eternal peace. It just so happened that the second clone of Emperor Xiao Yao had arrived. Su Yu wanted to borrow the power of Emperor Xiao Yao to get rid of these existences that no one could do anything about. Chapter 2468. It made him think that he really only had the power to escape. Everything sounded simple, but in fact, every step had to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, any mistake would be seen through by Emperor Xiaoyao, and he would not be able to use his power to eliminate the 3 hidden dangers. Aunt, you are smart for now. Everything is your plan, but so what? Emperor Xiaoyao slowly drew down the ruler in his hand. You eliminated the 3 hidden dangers, so what? You can't even protect yourself, so why do you care so much? A long crack spread from the end of the ruler to this place. Su Yu covered his right eye with his palm and said slowly, "That's why I said I never ran. Because, when facing you, there is no need to run." When he moved his palm away, a power that shook the heavens and the earth trembled in Su Yu's right eye. It was as if a great power that could seal off the heavens and the earth had been suppressed in his right eye. Now, the seal was broken, and he was about to break free. Boom, boom, the surroundings were shaking because of this power. Even Emperor Xiaoyao was no exception. He stared at Su Yu's right eye with a solemn expression. That power was still within the seal in his right eye, but it already gave off an aura that made him slightly fearful. How huge would it be if it was all released? This is the surprise I prepared for you. Let's see if you like it. Su Yu shouted. His right eyelid, which had been closed for a long time, finally opened a slit. Crack. Suddenly, the world that his right eye saw shattered into pieces like a mirror. In his right eye, 8 dazzling rays of light revolved around his pupil and spun rapidly. It was like a windmill spinning wildly in a hurricane. Every time it spun, the 8 Great Supreme Realm would be released. When the 8 Great Supreme Realm appeared at the same time, a small world would be constructed. That was all. In Su Yu's pupil, there was a wonderful world that was difficult to see from the outside world. That world was incompatible with the Absolute Beginning Realm. Any great path of the Absolute Beginning Realm could not affect that small world. That was Su Yu's 30-foot small world. In the process of breaking through the 8 Great Supreme Realm with the help of the Divine Throne of Heaven and Earth, with the help of the power of comprehension, Su Yu had a new understanding of his own 30-foot small world. Furthermore, he had successfully merged the 8 domains with the small world, forming a brand new sealing technique. The 3 zhang-long small world was hidden deep in the pupil, and it was forcibly divided into 81 pieces. Every single fragment was currently being infused with the 8 paragon domains. Thus, each fragment of a small world became a complete world supported by 8 great domains, a true world on the same level as the Absolute Beginning Realm. There was nothing in the real world except for Su Yu's 8 Great Supreme Realm. In other words, in this real world, Su Yu was the master of it. Everything that entered it would submit to Su Yu's will. At this moment, the 8 supreme domains were spinning rapidly. Every single time it spun, a fragment of the true world would absorb the 8 regions and fly out of the eye. A small world was a true world, and the absolute beginning realm was a true world. Therefore, after the small realm flew out, it immediately smashed into the outer realm that the great beginning realm belonged to, causing many fragments to appear. Emperor Xiaoyao sucked in a cold breath. Even the emperor of the sacred mountain would not dare to easily step into the real world outside the absolute beginning realm. Because once he did so, he would probably be exiled to the real world forever and would never be able to return. Their godly skills in the great beginning realm might not be of any use in those realms. His figure retreated frantically, trying to stay away from Su Yu. However, Su Yu's right eye opened completely at this moment. Su Yu's real world appeared. The small world belonged to Su Yu, and so did the 8 great domains. Therefore, the real world could be called Su Yu's real world. All of a sudden, 81 fragments of the real world swept out like a storm, silently cutting everything that Su Yu's right eye saw. Heaven and earth, the atmosphere and dust, nothing was spared. A meteorite was also in sight, and it was instantly broken into pieces. 5 broken stones were each sucked into a fragment of the small world, forever sealed in the fragment. The rest of the dust, atmosphere, civilization, and so on were no exception. Emperor Xiaoyao's pupils shrank to the extreme, and fear appeared on his face for the first time. "How dare you!" With a furious roar, he activated the Emperor Ruler, drew a crack across the sky, and headed straight for Su Yu, trying in vain to kill him. However, even the crack was swept away by the broken small world, forever drifting in the small world fragment, unable to come out. With a miserable scream, 81 fragments of the small world sliced through Emperor Xiaoyao's body at the same time. His body was instantly cut into 81 pieces. Every part of his body was sucked into a small world fragment. Every part of his body that fell into the small world fragment was reborn with a drop of blood, turning into a complete Emperor Xiaoyao. Of course, every part of his strength was only 1/2 of the original 81 pieces. The 81 Emperor Xiaoyao struggled in different small world fragments, trying to break the small world and escape. 8 great domains, suppress him forever! Su Yu yelled. In the 81 fragments of the small world, all the 8 great domains were launched at the same time, each turning into a swirling vortex, suppressing the struggling Emperor Xiaoyao. The second clone of Emperor Xiaoyao might not be afraid of the suppression of the 8 great domains. However, after being divided into 81 pieces, he no longer had the strength of the second clone. He was easily suppressed on the ground, unable to move. "Ah! Su Yu, you can't suppress me. Sooner or later, I will come back." Emperor Xiaoyao roared angrily. However, in the small world fragment, he couldn't even transmit his roar. Su Yu's eyes were cold. His arms drew one trajectory after another in front of his chest, and he suddenly yelled, "Scatter!" Chirp, chirp, chirp. Pieces of the small world fragments turned into flowing lights and flew in all directions. All of the fragments rushed into the other side of the seal through the gap that Taotai had opened, and with an extremely fast speed, scattered in all directions. Emperor Xiaoyao was divided into 81 pieces and scattered to the ends of the earth. If he wanted to come out, there was only one way, and that was to combine the 81 fragments of the small world and gather them together again. However, now the small world fragments were scattered in every corner of the 8-star civilization. Even if someone with a mind mobilized all forces to search for them, it would take at least 50 years to succeed. Emperor Xiaoyao was completely sealed. With a thump, Su Yu knelt on the ground powerlessly. The 8 great domains in his right eye not only didn't stop rotating, but they continued to accelerate, causing severe pain in his right eye, as if it was about to be destroyed. Su Yu wanted to stop it, but the 8 great domains were already out of control. Chapter 2469. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Although he had expected that there would be repercussions from using the 8 great realms so frequently, He had not expected the repercussions to be so severe. However, he did not expect the consequences to be so severe. The 8 domains were completely out of control. If this continued, his right eye would not be able to withstand the 8 great realms of time and space, and would be destroyed. Then, his body would be turned into a part of the 8 great realms. This joke is not funny. Su Yu's heart sank as he forcefully sealed his right eye with the power of the Xian Path Master. However, he was only able to seal it for a moment before it was destroyed by the 8 great realms. This was bad. If he did not die at the hands of Prince Xiaoyao, but at the hands of his own 8 great realms, it would be hilarious. Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron, suppress. Su Yu summoned the Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron and forcefully suppressed his right eye. Only then did he manage to suppress the 8 great realms that had gone out of control. However, Su Yu could only smile bitterly in response. The 8 great realms had indeed suppressed him for the time being, but he could not keep the Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron on his right eye forever, could he? Putting the Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron in front of him was already a huge problem. He looked around as he tried to come up with a solution. All of a sudden, he saw a gentle white light moving in his left eye. He looked carefully and saw an old man in a Taoist robe riding a snow-white deer. He was approaching him unhurriedly. Su Yu knew that snow-white deer. It was the divine light deer. Su Yu also knew the old man in the Taoist robe. He was the old Taoist who had asked him why people died. It was this old Taoist who had saved him when the destructive waves of light exploded in the depths of the East region. What surprised Su Yu even more was the white-robed old man following closely behind the divine light deer. The white-robed old man was one of the 3 guardians of the Xian Dao Palace. He was staring at Su Yu with a calm smile as he slowly followed the old Taoist. "We meet again." The old Taoist walked over and jumped down from the back of the divine light deer. He had a faint smile on his face. Su Yu said calmly, "Are you the palace master of the Xian Dao Palace?" He had been wondering why the palace master of the Xian Dao Palace had not appeared after he destroyed it. The palace master of the mystic Dao Palace should be a supreme expert in the world to be able to establish the mystic Dao Palace. No matter how he thought about it, the only person in the entire outer realm who had the qualifications to be the hall master of the mysterious Dao Palace was probably this mysterious old Daoist priest. Plus, the protector of the Xian Dao Palace was following him. His identity was obvious. I knew I couldn't hide it from the successor of the ancient god Jiulong. The old Taoist chuckled. "I, Ancestor Lu, am fortunate to be acquainted with the successor of the ancient god Jiulong." Su Yu had an indifferent look in his eyes. "Aren't you embarrassed to come out? When I was fighting with Prince Xiaoyao, you hid at the side and didn't make a sound. Now that everything is settled, you came out to acknowledge me." Lu Zhu was extremely embarrassed when he heard this, and he laughed and said, "Cough, cough, these are all minor details that can't be overlooked. Su Yu said impatiently, "Tell me, why did you come out to look for me now?" He had a good impression of Ancestor Lu. Otherwise, he would also see Ancestor Lu as a threat from the outer realm and use the power of Emperor Xiaoyao to kill him. "I'm here for your eye, of course." Ancestor Lu spoke the truth. Having witnessed Su Yu's terrifying combat power, which even Emperor Xiaoyao was exiled forever, Ancestor Lu had run out to meet Su Yu. If Su Yu couldn't figure it out and exiled him forever, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. He had come for Su Yu's eye. "Tell me the details." Ancestor Lu took out a pitch-black eye mask and said, "If you don't mind, you can try this." After a moment's hesitation, Su Yu took the eye mask and put it on his right eye. It was strange that such a powerful 8 great domains could be covered by a seemingly ordinary eye mask. "What is this?" Su Yu asked in surprise. Ancestor Lu stroked his beard and smiled. "When I was traveling in an 8-star civilization, I fought with an old ghost and won it. I thought I wouldn't need it for the rest of my life, but I didn't expect it to come in handy." Su Yu thought for a moment, then cupped his fists and said, "Thank you." Ancestor Lu waved his hand. "There's no need to thank me. You've wiped out all the hidden dangers in the outer realm, so I should be thanking you." But Ancestor Lu looked at the broken outer realm, which was barely holding on with the 8 great domains, and said with a bitter smile, "But the outer realm is about to be destroyed because of this." Su Yu looked at the sky above. Others couldn't see it, but he had mastered the 8 great domains, so his perception of the great paths was far superior to that of ordinary people. "Don't worry, the great path of state beginning has already appeared. In an hour or a month, it will evolve into 10,000 paths and restore balance to the outer realm." In Su Yu's eyes, a dark red great path was quietly evolving into 10,000 paths. The great path of state beginning was the mother of all great paths. The imbalance of the great paths in the outer realm would definitely attract the mother of the great paths to restore the balance of the local great paths. Ancestor Lu was shocked. He sensed carefully and found that some of the destroyed great paths had indeed reappeared. His face relaxed. "That's good. Otherwise, I really don't know how to explain it to the ancient god Jiolong." Su Yu's expression turned solemn, his eyes fierce. "The ancient god Jiolong? You've seen him before?" Ancestor Lu nodded calmly. "Yes, before he went to the Tao Abyss, he came here and we had a chance meeting." "What did he come here for?" Su Yu's eyes burned with hope as he asked anxiously. He had always felt that the outer realm was an extremely mysterious place. Why did the cenotaphs of 4 of the 8 great ancient gods be here? Why did the Lotus of Traversing Nightmare, which was extremely rare in the last era, appear here? Why did the Tao Tai escape to the desolate outer realm instead of far away or near? Most coincidentally, the Tao Tai was holding the ancient god Jiolong realm in its mouth. Was there some great secret hidden in it? Ancestor Lu shook his head and looked at Su Yu meaningfully. "I can't tell you now. Unless you reach the level of the master of the heavenly law one day." Su Yu frowned. Why must he wait until the level of the master of the heavenly law? As if he knew what Su Yu was thinking, Ancestor Lu said, "Calm down. This is the ancient god Jiolong's intention. He must have his reasons for making such arrangements." "The master of the heavenly law?" Su Yu nodded slightly. "If you are going to the 8-star civilization on this trip, I suggest you train your 8 great domains to the Yuan level as soon as possible. Only then can you regain control of the 8 great domains and not lose control as it is now." Upon hearing that, Su Yu nodded. The first task of going to the 8-star civilization was to find the sinful Lady Palace and resurrect Yun Yazi. If there was a chance, what harm would there be in training the domains to the Yuan level? "Farewell," Su Yu said. Ancestor Lu said, "Go ahead. I will take good care of your people." Chapter 2470. Su Yu removed the blindfold, released the space realm, and hurried on his way. He was weighing the pros and cons in his mind. His trip to an 8-star civilization was unpredictable. It was best not to remove the blindfold and expose his expertise in the 8 great supreme martial artist domains. Otherwise, he would be in deep trouble. Half a day later, he successfully returned to the Azure Dragon civilization. Because of the battle between Su Yu and Xiaoyao's son, the entire East Region Divine Manor had fled. In the Azure Dragon civilization, except for the low-level martial artists and ordinary people who could not cross the void, everyone else had left. "It's empty." Su Yu's heart was filled with a sense of disappointment and relief. He was disappointed that he could not see Xian'er. He was relieved that Luo Xue had done as he had said. He had not returned for a month, and she had left with Xian'er. Thinking of this, he removed the blindfold again, used the space realm, and arrived at the Forbidden Forest. Before the battle, he had asked Huang Fui to wait here. But now, the Forbidden Forest was empty, and there was a long ravine nearby. He must have gone to an 8-star civilization, right? Su Yu thought to himself. He had wanted to teach Huang Fui personally. Sighing, he came to an abandoned civilization outside the colored glaze civilization. Master. Meng Qir appeared with a hidden fleet and stepped forward respectfully. In the past few months, the news of the battle between Su Yu and Xiaoyao Sun had spread throughout the entire region. These former pirates respected Su Yu as if he were a god. They did not even dare to breathe in front of him. Did anyone come here a few months ago? Su Yu asked. Meng Qir nodded. Yes, a woman named Luo Shui brought a pregnant woman. They had Master's token, and then they entered the main ship and never came out again. Su Yu did not say a word. He came to the main ship where Xie Xiaoye used to be. On her main ship, there was a mountain overflowing with evil energy. It was from that mountain that Xie Xiaoye had excavated many treasures, allowing her to quickly establish her own pirate fleet. But back then, the evil energy in the mountain was too strong. With Su Yu and Xie Xiaoye's abilities, they could not open it. Now, he came to the main ship and stood in front of the small mountain. Many of the seals on the mountain had long been broken, revealing the object in the deepest part of the mountain. Back then, Su Yu had discovered from Xiao Dai's perspective that there was a divine item at the level of a Taoist artifact sealed in the innermost part. Now, they could already see the thing that had broken the seal. An ancient formation. Just as I expected, Su Yu muttered. There was a groove on the ancient formation, and it looked like something had to be inserted into it. Su Yu silently took out a token. It was the token that Xie Sanren had dropped after his death. Sealed within the command medallion was a sliver of the space-time sovereign's power. Unfortunately, Su Yu was just able to fit the badge into the groove. Creak. The power in the token surged into the formation and activated it. Powerful waves of light were emitted from the ancient formation. As it turned out, when Su Yu had obtained the token from Xie Sanren's hand, he had realized that this item had the same aura as the doctrine artifact that he had sensed in Xie Xiaoye's small mountain. On top of that, evil Sanren had the support of the so-called space-time dominator. He was sure that this token was the treasure that Xie Sanren had used to travel between 8-star civilizations. Hence, Su Yu had asked Luo Shui to bring Qin Xianer here. The reason for that was because he had predicted that apart from the token, there would also be a corresponding ancient formation on the hill. Everything was as he had predicted, without the slightest error. I just don't know if this transportation formation is a directional transmission or a random transmission, Su Yu murmured as he jumped onto the ancient formation. A beam of light shot into the sky and took Su Yu away. In an instant, a violent force that could tear his body apart swept him away, instantly breaking through the ancient formation of the 8-star civilization. The force of the impact was too great. Even as Master Xian, he could not withstand such a strong impact and fainted on the spot. In a daze, he felt someone moving his body, and he suddenly woke up. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself on a spacious, cold stone platform. As vigilant as he was, he immediately got up, squatted down, and looked around. What he saw was a vast scene of tens of thousands of master domains crisscrossing. The domain of 10,000 paths encompassed everything between heaven and earth, including pavilions, wind, rain, thunder, lightning, spiritual mountains, and treasure veins. In the domain, people came and went, and it was unusually lively. At the entrance of the domain of 10,000 paths, 3 heavy words came into view. Supreme One Faction. Su Yu was startled. This is a faction? There were no man-made buildings in the entire faction. Everything was built by the domain. The number of domains was as many as 10,000. In the outer realm, this was simply unimaginable. All the Pathmasters in the outer realm added up to only tens of thousands? And who could organize 10,000 of them to maintain a faction for 10,000 generations? It was impossible. In addition, the special power that the Pathmasters in the outer realm needed to cultivate could only be found in special areas like the Glaze Ancient Cave. But here, it was in the atmosphere. Although it was very thin, it was much better than having none at all. What surprised Su Yu the most was that when he casually glanced at the crowd, there was no one whose cultivation was lower than the divine warriors of heaven and earth. Even children in their teens had the cultivation of the divine warriors of heaven and earth. The Yellow Path Master was extremely common. All the young people had reached the level of the Yellow Path Master. The most terrifying thing was that there were a few young people whose cultivation had reached the level of Master Xian. They were not much older than Su Yu. This must be an 8-star civilization, right? Su Yu was shocked for a long time. He had imagined the glory of an 8-star civilization and was mentally prepared for its prosperity. But when he really came to an 8-star civilization, he found that the gap between the two sides was beyond imagination. In an 8-star civilization, Su Yu could be called a peerless heaven ruler. 150 years old Master Xian could be called a legendary existence in the outer realm. However, in an 8-star civilization, people like Su Yu were not as common as the hairs on a cow, but they were not extremely rare. His mind was shaken. It took a long time for him to recover and slowly stand up. Hey, another one who was scared silly. Did you see that? Two young men in uniform walked by and sneered at Su Yu. It was as if they were looking at a country bumpkin who had just entered the city. Su Yu's mind was calm and he did not feel inferior. These people were just lucky to be born in such a privileged environment. Even so, their cultivation was only at the level of the Yellow Path Master. On the other hand, Su Yu had cultivated to the level of Master Xian in the harsh environment of the outer realm and the scarcity of resources. He was far above them. What did he have to feel inferior about? Chapter 2471. Su Yu paid no attention to their sneers as he quietly observed his surroundings. He found that people were constantly being teleported over near the platform he was standing on. It turned out that the platform was a transportation station. Most of the people who were teleported had the same reaction as Su Yu. They were shocked by the extraordinary and wonderful things of the Greater One sect. Soon, the platform stopped operating, and no more people were teleported over. Near the platform stood tens of thousands of people dressed in different clothes. They looked around in confusion and kept talking to each other, trying to get closer to each other. Silence. At that moment, a cold voice cut across the sky. A very powerful force of the Xian Path Master descended on the platform. A middle-aged bird-like creature with black wings on his back flew out from the Greater One sect in a dignified manner. He looked down at the tens of thousands of people on the ground and said, "I am the third steward of the Greater One sect." Although the crowd did not know the identity of the steward, they could guess from the respectful gazes of the people of the Greater One sect that this person was definitely someone with a high position in the Greater One sect. Hence, they all quietened down. "First of all, I want to congratulate you for being randomly selected to the Greater One sect. Secondly, no matter where you were recruited from now on, you are all people of the Greater One sect." Hearing this, Su Yu was slightly surprised. Recruited? Was the third steward referring to the recruitment of the 8-star civilizations? But the recruitment targets were not only from the outer regions, but also from other places? He was slightly puzzled. "Do you have any questions?" the third steward asked. One of the young path masters who boasted of his good cultivation asked bravely, "Third steward, why are there so many people in the recruitment of the 8-star civilizations? And these people are not from our region." Hearing that, the third steward looked solemn, and some of the people of the Greater One sect were already laughing out loud. "That's enough. Every time there is a recruitment, there is always a frog at the bottom of a well who asks such a stupid question." The third steward cast a sidelong glance at the young man who asked the question and said calmly, "It's very simple. You will understand once you look at this ancient map." He raised his finger, and a vast map appeared in the sky. Most of the space on it depicted a place called the Dream-Broken Boundary. At the edge of the realm of dreams, there were many hair-thin lines densely covering the border of the realm of dreams. From afar, it looked like a thick layer of hair growing on the world of dreams. What made Su Yu's breathing quicken was that one of the hairs had the words, Outer World, written on it. Extraterritorial world. Su Yu was shocked. Compared to the dream-broken world, the vast extraterritorial world was just a hair? Moreover, this map was obviously not the complete version of the 8-star civilization. It was just a corner of it. When the people from the small worlds who had already quietened down realized that the place where they came from was like a strand of hair compared to the world of dreams, they all revealed expressions of astonishment, disbelief, or shock. They really couldn't accept that the world that gave birth to them and raised them was actually so small. That's all. Now, it's time for me to explain the situation to you, the third deacon said in a dignified tone. Although you were fortunate enough to pass the recruitment, but this does not mean that you will definitely become an official disciple of Greater One sect. The youth that first asked again, May I ask the third steward, is there a distinction between formal and informal disciples of Greater One sect? Yes, you can say that. The third deacon said, there are only two kinds of disciples in the Greater One sect. One is official and the other is slaves. You newcomers can only be slaves for the time being. What? Slaves? Did I hear that right? Slaves? In their own regions they were the cream of the crop, the cream of the crop. Yet here at the Greater One sect there was a possibility that they could become slaves? This was truly too difficult to accept. The youth that asked the question said righteously, Third steward, did you recruit us to make us slaves? If that's the case, forgive us for not being able to accept it. Most of them had come under orders to successfully enter an 8-star civilization before the end of the era. After they had mastered their studies, they would return to help their own civilization avoid the destruction of the era. How could they tolerate being slaves in an 8-star civilization? We have all been deceived. Many of the young talents were instantly enraged, feeling that they had been deceived. Let's go. Without the Greater One sect, we can still live well. That's right. An 8-star civilization is extremely prosperous. Why should we submit to the Greater One sect as slaves? Under the instigation of some people, thousands of young talents chose to leave one after another. Su Yu had originally planned to follow them, but he was keenly aware that neither the third steward nor the Greater One sect members stopped them. This caused him to slowly retract his footstep. The youth that asked the question first was also extremely astute. He had already taken a step forward, but now he quietly retracted his footsteps. The 1,000 aggressive young talents thought that they had the advantage in numbers, so the Greater One sect did not stop them. Valiantly and energetically, they walked down the stairs of the platform, down the mountain gate of the Greater One sect, and arrived at the foot of the mountain. In front of them was a prosperous world. Treasures that were rarely seen in their hometown were everywhere. Even the weeds on the roadside could be picked up casually. In their hometown, they would be the best of the best. With such a generous environment, even if they were pigs, they would have great achievements. What's more, each of them was extraordinary. However, not long after they left the Greater One sect, the shadow of an hourglass appeared on top of their heads at the same time. There was only a thin layer of dust in the hourglass, and it was constantly dripping down. The group of people suddenly noticed the abnormality and were all surprised. Some of them immediately retreated to the area of the Greater One sect, and the hourglass immediately disappeared. There were also 300 or 400 extremely arrogant people who felt that since they had already left the Greater One sect, it would be beneath their dignity to go back, so they braced themselves to observe the changes in the hourglass. Drip, when the last drop of the hourglass fell completely, a strange scene appeared. 391 young talents, regardless of their cultivation, whether they were strong or not, regardless of whether they were good or bad, and regardless of whether they were good or bad. At the same time, their eyelids rolled and they died. That's right. They were all dead. On the platform, more than 10,000 young talents sucked in a breath of cold air. Those young talents who came back in time and were lucky enough to escape the disaster had cold hands and feet, and secretly rejoiced. If they hesitated for a moment, they would follow in the footsteps of those people. Only 391 stupid pigs died. This should be the best in the past few years, right? A Greater One sect member laughed mockingly. Another gatekeeper said, "This year there are indeed many smart people. The highest number of deaths was almost half of them, right? That's good, they will only listen to us if some people die." On the platform, many young talents were flustered. Chapter 2472. Is it a scheme of the Supreme Sect? How could this be? Only Su Yu knew that the hourglass was the time domain. His eyes slowly narrowed. Others could not feel it, but he could sense that the world outside the Supreme Sect was filled with endless time domains. As far as his eyes could see, everything was covered by the time domain. Moreover, the time domain was in an extreme state. Once a living being entered the domain, the flow of time would accelerate. As a result, the lifespan of living beings would be taken away by accelerated time, which was why they would suddenly die. This should be a Yuan level realm, right? Su Yu thought to himself. He also had a time domain, but he couldn't radiate it to such a vast area. The owner of this time domain was not only unparalleled in strength, but even his domain had reached the Yuan realm. It might even be more profound than Yuan-level domains. However, he also possessed the time domain. Su Yu was completely unafraid of the harm caused by the time realm. He could walk freely outside without being affected. Of course, he couldn't show it in front of everyone. Otherwise, the first to capture him would be the Greater One sect. Who still wants to leave? My Greater One sect will not hold you back. The third master said indifferently, his hands hidden in his sleeves. After witnessing the strange deaths of 391 people with their own eyes, who would dare to walk around recklessly? When everyone quieted down, the third deacon said unhurriedly, "The dream-shattered realm is under the rule of the time ruler. Apart from the sects specially granted by him, all areas are covered by his time domain. Once you leave the sect and lose the protection of the sect, your life will enter a countdown." Hearing this, the crowd burst into an uproar again. In that case, they could only stay in the Supreme Sect for the rest of their lives? Can't take a step out? Third manager, please show us the way. The young man who first asked the question asked again. This time, his attitude was much more sincere. His question was what everyone wanted to know the most. The third deacon said slowly, "It's easy to say, but it's actually very easy. If you work for the Greater One sect, you will be able to obtain the Sand of Time that is unique to the Greater One sect. If you add the Sand of Time into the hourglass, you will be able to survive outside for a longer time." In other words, the Sand of Time was life. Whoever had more time would have a longer life. Of course, if he stayed in the Supreme Sect for the rest of his life, he would not waste the Sand of Time. Everyone gritted their teeth in anger. In that case, they could only be slaves to the Supreme Sect, using the body of a slave in exchange for more Sand of Time. 1 grain of time sand is equivalent to 1 breath of time. The third deacon said, "When you first came to Dream Severance Realm, there were only 10 grains of Sand of Time in the hourglass. Outside the sect, you would die in 10 breaths of time. As long as you are willing to be slaves in the Supreme Sect, and work for the Supreme Sect, every day, you will receive a time crystal. A time crystal can be converted into 5 million grains of time sand, which is equivalent to 1 day of life. If you diligently serve as a slave for 10,000 years, or make great contributions to the sect, you can be promoted to an official disciple of the Greater One sect, and receive 3 time crystals every day." Hearing this, everyone cursed in their hearts. In other words, they had to work as long as they wanted to live in the outside world, right? If you don't have any objections, then get to work. You will soon discover that the Sand of Time is not only used to go out. It also has an unexpected use, the third deacon said calmly, as if he did not have a choice. Everyone was furious, but they really had no choice but to agree. Suyu wanted to leave now, but under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he was afraid he could not get away. He could only wait and see how things would develop. Before long, they were all led into the Supreme Sect. Following a staircase formed by the realm, they went to the underground of the Greater One Sect. While still on the staircase, they heard a clanking sound coming from underground. When they entered the underground, they found that there was another world under the Greater One Sect. The underground was an extremely vast world. Countless people of different ages were holding strange hammers, shovels, and other seemingly primitive tools, digging and digging in the underground world. At the same time, some areas that had been dug up were opened up, and some rare plants that had never been seen outside the realm were planted. Suyu only recognized one of the plants. The plant was covered with fist-sized crystals, which were filled with abundant energy to replenish the strength of the Path Master. He had seen it in the memory of the human demon. This thing was called Tao rice. As the name suggested, it was spirit rice for the Path Master to consume. Eating a grain of spirit rice, the Path Master could not only replenish his daily consumption, but also absorb the strength of the Path Master from it, gradually improving his cultivation. However, this thing had long been extinct, at least in the outer realm. He did not expect to find it here. Other than that, there were crops such as potatoes and cucumbers, but without exception, they were all top-notch ingredients for the Path Master to consume. Then, some areas were opened up to make divine weapons, charms, and other things needed by the faction. Most of the people who were engaged in this labor were slaves. The disciples of the Greater One Sect, who lived like princes, were merely supervising from the side. Your division of labor will be decided by drawing lots. Whatever you draw, you will do. You can draw lots once a month to change the division of labor. The third steward took out a giant bamboo tube, which contained tens of thousands of bamboo lots. Everyone stepped forward and drew their own bamboo lot. The bamboo lot that Suyu drew was engraved with the words, farming. An old slave, who was carrying oars, glanced at Suyu as he passed by, and could not help but exclaim in admiration, "Kid, you are quite lucky. Among the 10,000 lots, there are only 10 farming lots. You are lucky to have drawn it on your first time here." It seemed like farming was the easiest of all the jobs. Mining, on the other hand, was the most tiring work. Suyu was slightly puzzled. It was just mining. Did it have to be so exaggerated for the Path Master? All right, go and report to your respective posts. Suyu came to the vegetable field with the bamboo lot in his hand, and handed it to a supervising female Greater One Sect disciple. Her figure was slender, and her appearance could be considered pretty, but there was a hint of philistinism and harshness between her brows. "Newcomer, you are in charge of the vegetable field in the north. Today's task is to plant 100 grains of rice." The female disciple threw a hoe to Suyu, and said with a faint smile. Suyu picked up the hoe. It did not seem special, except that it was heavier. The vegetable field in the north was a new vegetable field that had yet to be cultivated. Suyu picked up the hoe and began to cultivate the land casually. Unexpectedly, not only did the hoe not dig a hole, but it also created a series of sparks on the ground. Looking at the vegetable field again, there was only a mark left. Suyu was stunned. Although he had just casually waved the hoe, the strength he used was at least at the level of Yellow Path Master. If this was outside the area, he would have dug through a small civilization. In the end, he only managed to dig out a shallow white mark here. What kind of soil was this? Chapter 2473. Suyu tried again, secretly using the power close to the great venerable realm. However, it still produced a series of sparks. Moreover, he only managed to dig a dent as thick as a finger, which was far from enough to bury a seed. Suyu estimated that with his current speed, it would be difficult for him to dig 100 pits in a day. He looked up at the female supervisor and asked, "What if I can't complete the task?" The female supervisor said with a faint smile, "You will understand at night." Judging from her attitude, if he really couldn't complete the task, the consequences would be quite serious. Su-yu could only be a little more serious and meticulously cultivate the vegetable field. At first, he was very slow, but after getting used to it, he sped up a little. Therefore, in the evening, he successfully planted 100 grains of Dao rice. He put down the hoe and looked up. He saw several old slaves who had been working in the vegetable field for a long time. They had already finished cultivating and were receiving today's time crystal from the female supervisor. As Su-yu walked over, the female supervisor looked at him in surprise. It was extremely difficult for a normal Master Huang, even if he was at the later stage of the great venerable realm, to cultivate 100 grains of Dao rice in a day. She had given this task to make things difficult for Su-yu, to let him understand the rules, and to bribe her with some benefits. Unexpectedly, Su-yu not only finished within the allotted time, but also slightly exceeded it. He was almost comparable to those old slaves. She didn't know that Su-yu's real cultivation level was that of Master Xian. Master Huang might be exhausted and unable to complete the task, but Su-yu would be relatively relaxed. The task has been completed. Today's time crystal. The female supervisor took out a beige time crystal and gave it to Su-yu. Then, she said, "Tomorrow, you will open a vegetable field in the northern region. Your task is 200 grains of Dao rice." Su-yu raised his eyebrows. He thought that if he tried his best, he should be able to complete 200 grains of Dao rice. However, the female supervisor was obviously making things difficult for him. His lips moved, but he finally fell silent. He noticed that the female supervisor's hand in her sleeve moved slightly, as if she had grasped something. She was waiting for Su-yu to resist and find a reason to attack. "Yes," Su-yu said calmly. Hearing this, the female supervisor's eyes flashed with vague disappointment. She nodded lightly and said, "Okay." After finishing the day's work, Su-yu disappeared. Seeing a group of people walking toward a huge cave in the underground mine, he followed them. He had just taken a few steps when someone bumped into his arm. Turning his head, he saw a skinny, haggard middle-aged man with a pair of sunken eyes and a bitter expression. He lowered his voice and said to Su-yu, "Fortunately, you didn't make a sound. Otherwise, you would have been whipped just now." Even a hoe in this place was unusually hard, so Su-yu didn't think that the so-called whip was an ordinary whip. If he really got hit by it, it would probably not feel good. As expected, that female supervisor was indeed looking for an opportunity to punish him. "Thank you for reminding me." Su-yu smiled and kept his distance. In an unfamiliar environment and with strangers, it was best to remain vigilant. We're all people with hard lives. It's what we should do. The middle-aged man patted Su-yu's shoulder. "My name is Old Jean, and I come from an extraterrestrial world. I have been here for 9,000 years. If you have any questions, you can come to me." Hearing this, Su-yu's mouth twitched. 9,000 years? According to what the third steward had said, if one could obtain a time crystal in one day, then 9,000 years of time crystals would be enough for Old Jean to leave the Greater One sect and roam the world, right? Why was he still a slave here? "My name is Su-yu. Uncle Jean, may I ask, how many time crystals have you accumulated all these years?" Su-yu's eyes flashed as he asked. Old Jean laughed dryly. "Take a guess. It would take at least 100 years to cross the dream-broken realm and leave this area, right?" But he was still a slave, which meant that he didn't even have 100 years' worth of time crystals. "Do you have 10 years' worth of time crystals?" Su-yu gave a very conservative number. Hee. Old Jean shook his head and bitterly extended 9 fingers. Su-yu was surprised. 900 is not a lot. Compared to 9,000 years of labor, 900 was indeed too little. It was far from enough for him to leave the Greater One sect. "It's 9. Old Jean said painfully. Even though Su-yu had mentally prepared himself, he couldn't help but be shocked. 9,000 years had passed, and he had only managed to accumulate 9? Wasn't this number too unbelievable? Did the Greater One sect not keep their word? Suyu thought to himself. No. The Greater One sect still abides by the rules, never delaying a single time crystal, old Jean said slowly. How could this be? Follow me and you'll find out. Old Jean brought Suyu along with the huge crowd into the giant cave. He saw that it was overcrowded. Slaves were all queuing up in front of a counter to buy a roll of paper. What's that? It's your resting room tonight, old Jean said. 1 scroll corresponds to 1 resting room. The price is half a time crystal. That was equivalent to half of a day's labor. Is it compulsory? What would happen if he didn't buy it? Old Jean shook his head. It's up to you whether you want to buy it or not. But if you don't buy it, I'm afraid you won't survive the night. Why was that? This mine runs through the 9 underworld. It's fine during the day, but at night, the 9 underworld's evil wind blows. Once you're hit, your life force will be greatly reduced, old Jean said. It's fine if you have a strong life force, but if you don't, you'll die that night. The 9 underworlds? Did the 9 underworlds really exist in this world? In the past, Suyu wouldn't have believed in the existence of the 9 underworlds, but everything about the 8-star civilization had changed Suyu's understanding. So, he still had reservations. Even Master Xian doesn't dare to stay in the 9 underworld's evil wind? Suyu asked. Old Jean said, Master Xian can, but he won't last more than 3 days. After that, he'll definitely die. Is that so? As they talked, they came to the counter. Suyu hesitated for a moment, then spent half a time crystal to buy a scroll. After buying the scroll, old Jean said, Let's go eat. Suyu hesitated. At our cultivation level, we don't need to eat, do we? Looking at the large group of people walking towards another cave, Suyu felt that there must be something else going on. In the outside world, we might not need to eat, but in this mine, we won't last more than a few days without food. Old Jean said. Suyu was skeptical, but he followed her lead and came to another wide counter. Many martial artists came forward to buy food. The food was simple and coarse, without any Taoist aura. Could even be called dog food. However, all the martial artists were fighting to buy it, afraid that they would fall behind. Old Jean also joined the fight, spending half a time crystal to buy a portion. Brother Su, if you don't buy it, you will feel very uncomfortable tomorrow morning. Looking at the dark food, Suyu shook his head. No matter how uncomfortable it was better than eating this food. The two chatted for a while, and Suyu obtained information that many new people didn't know. Holding the scroll, he went to the resting room he had bought. All the resting rooms were side by side, and there was a barrier outside. Using the scroll, one could open the barrier and enter the room to rest. When he opened the resting room, he was surprised to find that the owner of the resting room next to him was the young man on the platform who had asked questions enthusiastically. Suyu remembered that the young man seemed to have won the mining lottery. Compared to the relaxed Suyu, the young man seemed like a completely different person. His clothes were very messy, and he looked very haggard and tired, as if he had experienced countless life and death situations. His eyes were heavy and powerless. He turned his head to look at Suyu and forced a smile. Hello. Then he moved his heavy legs and opened his resting room with great difficulty. Is it really that bad? Suyu grinned. He had thought planting rice was very tiring work. Now it seemed that mining was several times more difficult. Shrugging his shoulders, Suyu entered the resting room. The room was empty, except for 4 walls made of mysterious purple ores. So, under normal circumstances, it is basically impossible to get the time crystal from the Greater One sect to go to the outside world, Suyu sighed. A scroll cost half a time crystal, and a meal cost the last half. The time crystal that he had earned after a day of hard work had all been spent. No wonder old Jean had only accumulated 9 time crystals in the 9,000 years he had been here. Unless there were special circumstances, he wouldn't be able to accumulate even one time crystal. Looking at the remaining half of the time crystal in his palm, Su Yu's eyes lit up. Maybe I should stay in the Greater One sect for the time being. Through Old Jin's description, Su Yu learned that all transactions in the dream-broken realm were settled with time crystals. Time crystals were the currency. Crystals and doctrine coins from the outside world were the most worthless things in the dream-broken realm. No one would want them even if they were thrown on the ground. Only time crystals could be used to buy what one wanted. And the place with the most things belonged to the 344 factions of the dream-broken realm. The Greater One sect was one of the 344 factions. The faction stored a large number of things that were difficult to find in the outside world, and everyone in the faction, including the slaves, had the right to buy them. As long as one had the time crystal, Su Yu was completely clueless about the dream-broken realm. He didn't even know where to go. If he left the Greater One sect now, where could he go? It would be better to buy some information with the time crystal in the Greater One sect. Maybe he could find some clues about the Sinful Lady Palace. Touching the time crystal in his palm, Su Yu thought for a moment and immediately focused on studying it. He found that the composition of the time crystal was very pure time domain. After thinking for a moment, he opened a corner of his eye mask and shot out a time domain. Then he clenched his fist and forcibly solidified the time domain. Tick-tock. Soon, a dark yellow crystal appeared in his palm. It looked exactly the same as the time crystal, but the color was very different. Moreover, it only existed for a few short breaths before melting back into the time domain. Chapter 2474. Seeing that it was getting dark, Su Yu prepared to meditate. Looking at the shabby environment, his heart was filled with worry. He had already learned from Lao Jin that the people who were transported here were randomly assigned to the 344 factions. Xian was not among the 10,000 new disciples of the Greater One faction. This meant that she was in another faction. Did Xian suffer too? Su Yu thought to himself, unable to meditate for a long time. Roar. Suddenly, a strange beast roar came from outside the resting room without warning. It was as if a man-eating demonic beast was hiding outside the resting room. Su Yu woke up immediately and opened his soul eyes to see what was happening outside. With a single look, Zhang Xian's expression changed drastically. An extremely strong wind was sweeping from the depths of the mine. The wind was so strong that it blew everything in the cave up into the sky. Although it was powerful, it posed no threat to the strong path masters. What posed a threat was the strong snow-white airflow in the wind. Wherever the airflow passed, it swept away all the vitality it encountered. Even the seeds of the Dao rice planted in the vegetable field had their vitality weakened significantly. Is this the 9 Serenities' evil wind? Su Yu was surprised. With its speed of devouring vitality, it posed no threat to Su Yu, who had mastered the life domain. But against ordinary living beings, it was extremely lethal. Shaking his head, Su Yu did not take it seriously. Until the next morning, the deafening sound of the bell reached his ears. It was the reminder of the opening of the mine. Su Yu left the resting room. As soon as he stepped out of the resting room, a shocking chill hit him in the face. His whole body was instantly frozen. In addition to the pain all over his body, his hands and feet were extremely stiff. The chill was extremely strange, as if it had penetrated deep into his bones and was not easy to dissolve. Even if he used his mysterious path energy, the effect would be minimal. If he waited for it to dissolve, it would take at least half a day. If he delayed for such a long time, he would not be able to complete the task, and he would not be able to get the time crystal. Without the crystal, he would not be able to live in the resting room, and his life would be swept away by the 9 Serenities' evil wind. Another idiot who is reluctant to buy food. Another newcomer died. No wonder Lao Jin reminded Su Yu to buy food. It turned out that the function of the food was to guard against the extreme chill left by the 9 Serenity's evil wind. Space realm. Suyu waited for the passers-by to leave before he quietly displayed the space realm. The cold that had invaded Xiao Chen's body was extracted inch by the space domain. A ball of remnant snow-white air current dispersed like smoke. Suyu let out a breath of foul air. Fortunately, he had many tricks up his sleeve. Seeing that work was about to start, Suyu went to the vegetable garden. The female supervisor looked coldly at Suyu and said calmly, "Do you need me to repeat today's mission again?" Without uttering a single word, Suyu went to the uncultivated wasteland further north and continued to cultivate. With his physique, it shouldn't be a problem for him to continuously excavate 200 small pits. By noon, Suyu had already reclaimed 100 hectares. If he continued, he should be able to successfully complete the mission. However, while Suyu was reclaiming the land, he felt as if there was a dagger on his back. It was the female supervisor, who was staring at him with an unkind gaze. This made him frown slightly. If she continued to make things difficult for him and asked him to plant 300 rice tomorrow, what should he do? The initiative was in the hands of the other party, and Suyu could not resist. I can't let this go on, Suyu thought. Hadn't old Golden Blood's lesson been enough? In 9,000 years, he had only obtained 9 time crystals. Trying to rely on being a slave to accumulate enough time crystals was just a pipe dream. He had to think of a way. Ding! Suddenly, as Suyu was digging, the hoe in his hand did not dig a shallow trench like before. Instead, the hoe was sent flying. Suyu felt that something was wrong and immediately looked at the spot where the hoe had just dug. He saw that under the shallow white mark left by the hoe, there was a faintly discernible purple radiance. He immediately picked up the hoe and continued to dig, finally digging out the true appearance of the purple radiance. It was an extremely light purple crystal. What is this? Suyu was slightly puzzled. Just as he was about to dig it out, the female supervisor suddenly rushed over. Before she even reached him, she shouted, "Stop!" Slap! A whip immediately lashed out at him. Fortunately, Suyu had dodged quickly. Otherwise, he would have been hit by the whip. The whip missed its target and landed near the crystal, causing the extremely hard soil of the vegetable field to splatter in all directions. It could be seen that the weight of the whip was not any weaker than a full-force strike from Suyu, the Xian Dao master. Her strike was obviously meant to take someone's life. Suyu's eyes turned cold as he stared coldly at the female supervisor. He had tolerated this woman many times, but she treated Suyu's life as worthless as grass. The female supervisor did not have time to pay attention to Suyu. She took a step forward and looked at the purple crystal, her face filled with surprise. An 8th grade 9 nether crystal. She dug out the crystal, her face full of joy. Swish, swish, swish. Several Supreme 1 faction members, who had noticed the abnormality, rushed over. They all looked at the purple crystal in the female supervisor's hand with envy and jealousy. Senior Sister Xianyin, you are so lucky. You managed to dig out an 8th grade 9 nether crystal even though you are in charge of the vegetable field. A young man said enviously. Another young man said with jealousy, a caddy of 8th grade 9 nether crystal can be exchanged for 10 time crystals. Senior Sister Xianyin, you are rich. You must treat us to a meal. Xiannin's face was full of joy. She chuckled and said, no problem. I will go back tonight and exchange it. As she spoke, she looked at Suyu. She finally found him pleasing to the eye. She threw a time crystal to him and warned him, if the faction's inspectors ask you who dug it out, do you know how to answer? It sounded like the 8th grade 9 nether crystal belonged to whoever dug it out. Xianyin forcefully occupied the 9 nether crystal that Suyu dug out and only used a time crystal to pass the time. Not only that, but she also secretly threatened him not to inform the faction. I know it was dug out by my lord, Suyu replied calmly. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Serene nodded. It's good that you know. In the future, you will feel much better if you have a better judgment. She had made things difficult for Suyu because he had come to the vegetable field that she was in charge of, but did not know how to please her. Now, she had accidentally obtained a whole pound of 8th grade 9 nether crystal. Suyu's face was calm, but he sneered inwardly. This woman probably did not know that there was an even bigger 9 nether crystal under the one she dug out. After learning that the 9 nether crystal was so valuable, Suyu secretly observed it with the shared vision of the butterfly. He immediately found that there was an even bigger and more valuable one under it. Of course, he would never say it out loud. After a busy day, Suyu completed his task and got the day's time crystal from the female supervisor. The latter hurried back to the faction above ground to exchange for the time crystal. Suyu went to exchange for the paper scroll as if nothing had happened. Inadvertently, Suyu found that Lao Jin was chatting enthusiastically with a new slave, just like how he treated Suyu the day before. Suyu's eyes flickered. After exchanging for the paper scroll, he went to his resting room the day before. Unfortunately, the young man was still next to him. Today, he was still half-dead tired. He staggered into his resting room to sleep. When the sky gradually turned dark, the 9 nether evil wind came as promised. At this moment, both the slaves and the supervisors hid in the resting room, not daring to stay outside for even a moment. The time has come. Suyu opened the room door. All of a sudden, the strong 9 nether evil wind swept over and quickly sucked away Suyu's life force. Suyu was not afraid. He secretly activated the life domain to replenish the lost life force. For him, it did not take much effort. Looking at the empty mine, Suyu returned to the vegetable garden with ease. He picked up the hoe and dug at the place where he had dug out the 9 nether crystal during the day. Finally, with a ding sound, Suyu dug it out. A 9 nether crystal the size of a head and weighing 5 kilograms came into view. After much effort, he finally dug it out successfully. After a brief examination, Suyu was slightly surprised to find that this 9 nether crystal seemed a little different from the one in the day. There was a mosquito in the depths of this 9 nether crystal. The mosquito was intact and lifelike. It still maintained the flying posture it had when it was alive. Why is there a mosquito in the crystal? Suyu was surprised. He guessed that the mosquito must have been caught in the moment the 9 nether crystal was condensed. He did not think too much and returned to the resting room quietly. No one knew anything. The next day, Suyu came to the vegetable garden again. Xian was in a good mood after exchanging 10 time crystals. She only assigned Suyu the task of watering the plants, which gave him a rare day of relaxation. After thinking for a while, Suyu took out a time crystal that she had rewarded him yesterday and gave it to her. He said, "My lady, you were the one who found the 9 nether crystal. After much thought, I don't think I should want this time crystal." It was not that he did not want it, but he did not want to owe this woman anything when he took revenge on her in the future. Xian accepted it with a faint smile. "You finally got it? Fine, I'll give you a day off. Go and rest." Suyu was happy to hear that. He needed to deal with the 9 nether crystal in his hands. "Thank you." Xian waved her hand and beckoned to an old slave not far away. "Come here, water it." Suyu left the underground mine along the stairs and went to the upper level. Even as a slave, Suyu could freely enter and exit the Greater One faction. He disguised himself slightly and entered. Following the road signs, he came to a domain of the Greater One faction. There were tens of thousands of palaces in this domain. It was also the most bustling place in the faction. Those palaces were all trading places. They provided all kinds of precious goods that the Path Masters needed. Of course, they all required time crystals to exchange. One of the great halls was dedicated to exchanging 9 nether crystals. Suyu came to the counter. The people who came here were all in uniform. Only Suyu, An outsider who was obviously dressed as a slave entered. He was unusually conspicuous. Many people frowned when they saw him, expressing their contempt and curiosity. Why was a slave up here instead of working hard down there? Chapter 2475. The shopkeeper was burying his head in bookkeeping when he suddenly heard the voice, and he thought it was an official disciple of the sect, so he said with a smile, "Which person in charge is so lucky to have dug out a high-grade netherworld crystal? Supreme sect rules. Ordinary netherworld crystals all belong to the sect and were dug out by slaves who specialized in mining. Those who discover 9 nether crystals of the 8th grade and above can come here to exchange for the time crystal." However, when he raised his head and saw that Suyu was not a disciple of the faction, but just a slave, he was obviously startled. He had been a shopkeeper here for some years, but this was the first time he encountered a slave who came to exchange for a time crystal. Under normal circumstances, wouldn't all the high-grade 9 serene crystals that were dug out be taken away by the supervisor in charge? This slave actually managed to hide a piece of netherworld crystal from the supervisor in charge. The smile on the shopkeeper's face, which was originally full of smiles, immediately lessened. He said indifferently, "Oh? What rank is it?" The netherworld crystal was divided into 9 grades according to its level. The first grade was the highest grade underworld crystal, but it was said that it had only appeared a few times in the entire dream-shattered realm. It was a legendary grade. The 9th grade was the lowest grade of underworld crystal, which was also the most common underworld crystal. 8th grade, Suyu said. The shopkeeper nodded expressionlessly. "Yes, take it out and let me appraise it." Suyu took out a light purple 9 serenities crystal the size of a head. So big! The shopkeeper was shocked. Under normal circumstances, the 9 nether crystal would only weigh about half a caddy or even less. It was rare to see more than 500 grams of 9 underworlds crystal. The 9 nether crystal before him was the size of a head and weighed 2.5 kilograms. It was extremely rare. "Look, that slave actually found such a huge abyssal crystal." "So big?" "It's rare." A group of goalkeepers passing by came up curiously. The shopkeeper looked at Suyu with jealousy. As a shopkeeper, his annual salary was only 200 time crystals. This slave was lucky enough to find the 9 serenities crystal, which weighed 5 kilograms. According to the exchange rate of 1 to 10, he could exchange it for 50 time crystals. "Okay, I'll weigh you now." The shopkeeper took a deep look at Suyu. He wanted to see through Suyu's true appearance. Unfortunately, Suyu was wearing a disguise. Hence, the shopkeeper could only give up. The shopkeeper placed the 9 nether crystal on a very tightly packed magic treasure. This magical treasure could accurately measure the exact weight without the slightest error. Rays of light immediately shot out from the magic treasure and continuously scanned the netherworld crystal. At the same time, an accurate number appeared under the magic circle: 5 caddies and 3 tails. 5 caddies and 3 tails can be exchanged for 53 time crystals. As the shopkeeper spoke, he recorded it down. Unexpectedly, the Dharma artifact suddenly buzzed loudly. The beeping sound was so loud that the entire hall could hear it. Those goalkeepers who hadn't noticed the commotion all rushed over in shock. This sound. Did he discover the netherworld odd crystal? No way. It has been decades since our Greater One sect has unearthed a netherworld odd crystal, right? The shopkeeper raised his head abruptly, and his face was filled with surprise as he sized up the 9 darkness crystal once more. After staring at it for a moment, he finally noticed an inconspicuous black dot in the netherworld crystal and exclaimed, "It's a mosquito! Oh my god! It really is a netherworld odd crystal! Damn! That slave is rich! The value of the netherworld odd crystal will at least double." Suyu was also stunned. What? Would the value of the 9 serenities crystal be higher if there was a foreign object in it? This was unexpected. The shopkeeper confirmed that it was at 3 and finally took a breath. He looked at Su Yu with jealousy and envy, as if he wanted to know which slave he was in charge of. However, it was all in vain. Su Yu had already taken precautions. Congratulations, this is a netherworld odd crystal. There is a mosquito sealed inside, and it is also a relic of the lowest level. The value of this netherworld odd crystal will double. This is your time crystal. The shopkeeper handed over 100 time crystals. Su Yu collected them all calmly, then separated the crowd and walked to the other halls. To his disappointment, there was no one in the faction that specialized in selling information. There were two ways to get information. One was to ask people. However, with Su Yu's current identity as a slave, it would be good if he wasn't treated with contempt. Who would be willing to tell him information about the sinful lady palace out of kindness? Then there was only the second way, a reward. He could put up a reward in the reward hall, and those in the know would inform Su Yu after accepting the reward. Therefore, he moved to the reward hall and posted a reward of 90 time crystals for a year. If he couldn't get any information about the sinful lady palace in a year, it could also mean that no one knew about it. There were only 10 time crystals left. Many slaves who obtained the surplus time crystals might choose to come to the Supreme One sect to enjoy themselves. Of course, Su Yu wouldn't do that. The slaves who made such a choice were all looking forward to the arrival of the 10,000-year deadline and turning from slaves to official employees of the Supreme One sect. Su Yu wandered around and suddenly found a tool hall. There were all kinds of tools specifically for the mine, such as hoes, shovels, awls, and so on. Moreover, the price was not cheap. The lowest price was 10 time crystals, and the most expensive was 1,000 time crystals. Is there any difference between this hoe and the hoe below? Su Yu asked as he walked into the hall. The hoes provided in the mine were free, but here they still required expensive time crystals to buy. The shopkeeper in the hall was not as arrogant as the shopkeeper in the redemption hall. He smiled and said, "You will know when you see it." He took out a stone the size of a table, which was exactly the same texture as the vegetable field in the mine. This is a cheap hoe provided by the faction. He took a hoe from the mine and dug hard at the stone. As expected, only a shallow white mark appeared. This is the hoe in my hall. He used the hoe in his hall to dig hard at the stone. As a result, he dug 10 inches deep. It was like a mortal digging slightly harder soil. It was very easy. Su Yu's eyes flashed, and he instantly understood its use. "I'll buy it." He immediately bought this special hoe with 10 time crystals. "Oh, little brother, you are a wise man. As the saying goes, sharpening the knife will not delay the work of cutting firewood. Although it costs 10 time crystals, the benefits are far more than 10 time crystals." What he meant was that with this thing, there was no need to worry about not being able to complete the task. This reduced loss, accumulated over the years, was not as simple as earning less than 10 time crystals. But he didn't know the real role of this hoe for Su Yu. After exchanging for the hoe, Su Yu circled around the 10,000 paths domain of the Supreme One sect several times, shaking off a large number of people who were secretly following him. Then he changed back to his original appearance and quietly returned to the underground mine. "Oh? You're back?" Xian Yin raised her eyebrows and said, "You can go back and rest today." For the sake of the time crystal, she would forgive Su Yu for the whole day. "I'm fine, I can still work for a while." Su Yu smiled and returned to the vegetable field. He took the ladle from the hands of the slaves and watered the rice one by one. Xian Yin smiled contemptuously. "You don't know how to enjoy the blessings." Then, she leisurely closed her eyes and meditated. She didn't know that Su Yu's watering was fake, and that he was using it to explore the underground 9 Serenities crystal. With Xiao Dai's shared perspective and the soul eye, as long as it wasn't hidden too deeply, he could find it. In the evening, Su Yu finished his cultivation expressionlessly, but he was very satisfied with today's exploration. Currently, under the 3 vegetable fields that he was responsible for, there were a total of 3 pounds of 8th grade 9 serenities crystal buried within 10 feet. Further north, there were still 8 or 9 pounds of 9 serenities crystal that had not yet been excavated. But these were not all. Suyu used Xiao Dai's shared perspective to spy 10 feet underground. There was a large, unknown object the size of a cow. Its color was darker than the 8th grade 9 serenities crystal that he had obtained previously. Looking with the soul eye, he could only see a gray blur. If this is a 9 serenities crystal, how heavy must it be? Suyu thought to himself, quite tempted. If there were enough time crystals, he could not only set up a bounty in the Greater One faction, but he could also set up a bounty in other factions. In this way, it would be easier to find clues about the Sinful Lady Palace. However, with Suyu's current hoe, it would take him 2 months to dig 100 feet deep. But all the positions were decided by drawing lots once a month. He might not have the chance to draw a vegetable field next time. If he was unfortunately drawn to another place, he would never have the chance to come back to dig the giant 9 serenities crystal. Let's dig out the 9 serenities crystal on the surface first. Suyu could not draw a lot, so he could only take one step at a time. The few pieces of 9 serenities crystal on the surface were said to be on the surface, but they were 10 feet deep and not easy to dig out. In the following time, during the day, he worked diligently with an ordinary hoe. At night, he sneaked out and dug out the 9 serenities crystal with a specially made hoe. With a specially made hoe, he dug them out in less than a night. A month later, he got all 12 pounds of 9 serenities crystal, which amounted to a total of 120 time crystals. Today was the day he would be reassigned. So far, Suyu had not found a way to stay in the vegetable field. After all, it was extremely difficult to manipulate the results of the lot drawing in front of the third steward. Su, come here. All of a sudden, Xianyin crooked her finger at Suyu. Suyu walked over and said, Lord, do you have any instructions? Xianyin nodded her snow-white chin slightly, and her beautiful eyes flickered slightly. Do you want to continue staying in the vegetable field? Of course. Suyu almost changed his bad impression of this woman. She was practically a pillow when she was about to doze off. As long as you promise to do something for me, I can use the supervision's privilege to keep you here, Xianyin said. The supervision had the right to use the supervision's privilege once a year, such as asking for a fixed slave to carry out a task without having to go through a new lot drawing. Please say it, Suyu said to himself. This woman's request was probably not something that could be exposed to the public. Xianyin nodded and said, Tomorrow, during the day, you will go to this place and complete a transaction for me. She quietly passed a space storage device to Suyu. Suyu took it and glanced inside. He was a little surprised to find that the thing inside was the 1 pound 8th grade 9 serenities crystal that she had snatched away a month ago. Chapter 2476. Suyu looked up and saw Xianyin's stern face. She said, Tomorrow there will be a small trade fair. There will be a merchant who specializes in collecting 9 underworld's crystals. Sell them to him at the price of 20 time crystals, then bring the crystals back and pass them to me secretly. Suyu was slightly surprised. She was selling the 9 underworld's crystals dug out from the Greater One faction to an outsider? Wasn't this a traitor? If the Greater One faction found out, it would be severely punished. No wonder Xianyin was so cautious. Why me? Suyu asked. Xianyin said approvingly, I've been observing you newcomers for the past month. You're the only one who does things flawlessly. The rest are too sloppy and can't take on big responsibilities. Suyu didn't deny that. He completed the tasks that he was supposed to complete perfectly every day. Even someone as mean as Xianyin couldn't find fault with him. As for the other newcomers, they either couldn't complete their tasks or encountered problems with their planting. Suyu was the only one who had completed it perfectly. Okay, I agree, Suyu said. Xianyin nodded and threatened, First, you must keep this a secret. Otherwise, I have ways to make you wish you were dead. Second, don't even think about running away with the money you earned from selling them. The nearest shelter outside the Greater One faction is half a year's journey away. You won't be able to reach there with just 10 time crystals. She didn't know that Suyu wasn't afraid of the power of the domain of time at all. If he wanted to leave, he could do so at any time. I understand, Suyu said. Satisfied, Xianyin said, wait here, I'll be right back. She returned to the surface for a while, and threw a paper scroll at Suyu. Take it, you can avoid drawing lots with this scroll. Sure enough, during the drawing of lots in the evening, Suyu held the scroll in his hand. The 3 managers really exempted Suyu from drawing lots and allowed him to stay at his original post. In this way, he could stay for another month. He should be able to get that giant 9 underworlds crystal. The next day, Suyu was working. Xianyin gave him a look and said, Suyu, you did well last month. I'll give you a day off. Go. Thank you, my lady. Suyu understood and left the underground mine to go outside. After Suyu came up, he immediately descended the mountain and left the faction. The Greater One faction had never restricted the freedom of the gatekeepers and slaves. Hence, Suyu left the faction without any hindrance and set off for his destination. That place was not far from the Greater One sect. It was only half a day's journey, just enough to make a round trip in one day. Suyu slowly descended from a cliff that had a chasm in it. Who are you? Before he even landed, he felt the pressure of Master Xian's might envelop him. Suyu was inwardly surprised. Even Xian Dao Master is attending the trade fair? After checking that there were no flaws in his disguise, Suyu said calmly, I was ordered to participate in the trade. Yes, come down. When Suyu landed, he could clearly feel a pair of eyes looking behind him to see if anyone had followed him. At the bottom of the cliff, Suyu finally saw the trading place. The group of 6 surrounded a bonfire that had been completely burned out. They were all on guard against each other. Almost all of them were like Suyu, who had disguised themselves so well that it was impossible to recognize each other. I'm Merchant Number 9, and I'm in charge of this transaction, a woman wearing a golden mask said to Suyu. Suyu nodded and walked over silently, waiting for the golden-masked woman to speak. Same rules, 1 to 20. Take out all the 9th nether crystals you have, the golden-masked woman said hastily. This kind of transaction was in fact a disguised form of poaching the corner of the Greater One sect, and was extremely risky. Once she was discovered by the Supreme Sect, she would definitely die. No one said a word. They even tried not to make a sound for fear of giving themselves away. He just silently took out his 9 nether crystal. The woman took out a magic tool that was exactly the same as the one in the Greater One sect. 7 tails, 14 time crystals. After the golden-masked woman confirmed the weight, she straightforwardly handed over 7 time crystals. However, he said, before the others leave, please stay here. This was to prevent those who had completed the transaction from leaking the news and attracting the people of the Supreme Sect. The latter seemed to be a veteran and understood the rules very well. He quietly meditated on the spot. 8 tails, 16 time crystals. 1 caddy, 20 time crystals. The golden-masked woman's voice was clearly louder, showing her emotional fluctuations. 3 tails, 6, 4 tails. Finally, the golden-masked woman looked at Suyu and asked, What about you? Let me have a look. Suyu took out Xianyin's first. 1 caddy. The golden-masked woman heaved a sigh of relief and smiled at Suyu. A total of 20 time crystals. As she spoke, she was about to take out the time crystals and give them to Suyu. Wait. You can give them to me after you weigh them. Suyu took out another portion of the 9 nether crystals. They were all stolen from the vegetable garden last month, and they weighed about 12 caddies. So many? The 5 people who had been silently waiting for the end of the transaction could not help but exclaim in surprise. Suyu took out a few pieces in total, all of which weighed more than 1 catty. The 5 of them were all secretly appointed by the supervisor to supervise the transaction. Therefore, the amount of each transaction was not much. However, the person in front of them took out more than 12 catties at once. Without a doubt, he must be one of the supervisors. Only the supervisors could hoard such a large number of 9 nether crystals. The golden-masked woman was beaming with joy. "Thank you for participating in my trade fair. I will buy these 9 nether crystals at the price of 1 space-time crystal per catty. I only hope that you will take care of my business in the future." She also misunderstood that Su Yu was one of the supervisors and regarded him as a major customer. Therefore, she gave him a considerable discount. Certainly, Su Yu uttered the 2 simple words. The golden-masked woman immediately gave Su Yu 2 53-time crystals. Apart from the 20-time crystals that he had to give to Serene, Su Yu had obtained 233-time crystals. Such an amount was equivalent to half a year's salary for the official gatekeepers. After the transaction was completed, the golden-masked woman took out 6 maps and handed one to each of them. "This is the location of the next transaction. It will take place in a month. I hope that you will come and support me. If you can bring someone trustworthy to trade with you, I will give you additional rewards." The people nodded silently, took the maps, and left. Su Yu did not linger. Such a transaction was indeed too dangerous. It was better to leave as soon as possible. The golden-masked woman took a deep look at Su Yu, and immediately packed up her things, preparing to leave. She was in a good mood. Today's harvest was equivalent to 4 or 5 transactions in the past. However, just as she was about to leave, the golden-masked woman suddenly sensed that something was wrong, and her expression changed abruptly. She did not even care about the things on the ground, and directly crushed a jade Buddha. The jade Buddha emitted beams of space energy, and she was instantly swept away. Almost at the moment when she left, a giant palm appeared out of thin air, slamming into the place where she had just left, shattering the space. If she had been any later, she would have been seriously injured even if she had not died. "Humph! You ran fast." A cold snort was heard, and a black-winged bird-like strong man broke through the air and flew over. He was the 3rd steward of the Greater One faction. He held a map in his palm, which came from nowhere, and stared coldly at the place where the golden-masked woman had escaped. Swish! 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 The auras of the Xian Dao Master rushed over one after another, surrounding the 3rd steward. "Third steward, are we still going to chase after them?" a strong man asked. The 3rd steward snorted. "How are we going to chase after them? These survivors are the most cunning, and they have already prepared a complete escape route for themselves. If we don't catch them on the spot, there is no way we can catch up with them." The golden-masked woman must have used the power of space to move to another place, and had already done it a 2nd time. Trying to catch up with her was no different from a fool's dream. But, even if she could not catch up, could the people who participated in the transaction not catch up? Capture them and torture them, which disciple ordered them to do so? The 3rd steward's face was as dark as water. It was not a secret that the internal members of the Greater One faction colluded with outsiders to resell the sect's 9 nether crystals. It was just that the merchants were very meticulous in their actions, and rarely gave themselves away. Until this time, when a slave exposed them, they were able to accurately find the location of the transaction. Unfortunately, they were still a step too late, and the merchants had escaped. Yes, the merchants had escaped, and the slaves lacked the time crystals, so they had nowhere to go, and could only run back to the sect, so it was very easy to capture them. Not long after, 5 of the 6 people had been caught and successfully captured. "Master, there is still one person we haven't caught up with." The group of Xian Dao masters braced themselves and returned. "Trash! Even a slave escaped." The 3rd steward angrily rebuked. The Xian Dao master, who was in charge of the chase, said embarrassedly, "I don't know why, but that slave's movement technique is extremely fast, much faster than me. He was also very helpless. It was obviously a slave with a low cultivation, but his speed was astonishingly fast, and he had shaken off the Xian Dao master in no time. He did not know that if Su Yu had not been afraid of exposing the space domain, he would have already taken a step and returned to the Greater One faction. Return to the faction immediately and investigate thoroughly. Don't let anyone escape. The third steward said sternly, vowing to get to the bottom of this matter. When the group returned to the Greater One faction, the first thing they did was to torture the 5 slaves, and force them to reveal the mastermind behind the scenes. Under such torture, the mastermind was quickly identified. In the underground mine, Xianyin was waiting for Su Yu's return anxiously. All of a sudden, hundreds of Greater One faction members in black uniforms barged in from the stairway, all of them looking stern and murderous. Xianyin's heart skipped a beat, as if she had missed a beat. The black uniformed men were the Greater One faction's law enforcement officers. Normally, they would not be dispatched at all, let alone such a large-scale operation. She suddenly had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. Swish, swish, in a mine not far from the vegetable garden that she was in charge of, a dozen law enforcement officers rushed over and subdued the supervisor in charge of that place. A stern law enforcement officer held a scroll in his hand and announced in a loud voice, "Mine number 3's supervisor, Yang Shan, colluded with outsiders and stole and sold the faction's 9 underworlds crystal. The evidence is conclusive, and he will be executed on the spot." After he finished speaking, he raised his hand, and the supervisor was beheaded on the spot. A long streak of blood splashed onto her vegetable garden, and Xianyin was so frightened that her beautiful face turned pale, and she did not dare to move. Chapter 2477. Her mind was filled with despair, feeling that everything was over. This small transaction had been discovered by the faction and was wiped out. Su Yu would not be an exception. 9th Mine Supervisor, Li Yunmei. Kill him on the spot. 1st Spirit Herb Garden Supervisor, Zhao Yunsong. Kill him on the spot. 5th Ore Warehouse Supervisor, Qin Fei. Kill him on the spot. 3rd Tool Supervisor, Yuan Linger. Kill him on the spot. In the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, the ruthless executions of the law enforcers came from the mine. Xianyin's face was pale, her entire body trembling in fear. She could almost hear herself being the next one. However, what she did not expect was for the law enforcer to stop. The rest of the supervisors, step forward and observe their heads as a warning to yourselves. Xianyin was startled. Did this have nothing to do with her? With a deep sense of apprehension, she followed the rest of the supervisors forward. Looking at the 5 bloody heads, Xianyin felt extremely guilty. Fortunately, the law enforcer did not notice. "Now all the slaves are to stop. We will start counting the number of people," the law enforcer announced, ordering all the slaves to stand by at their posts. Xianyin's heart, which had finally calmed down, started to pound again. "Lord GFA, once the slaves stop, the losses will be astronomical," one of the supervisors said with a pained heart. The enforcer said indifferently, "We've investigated and found out that there were 6 slaves that were reselling the sect's 9th hell crystals under the orders of the supervisor. 5 of the slaves have already been captured, and only the last slave has escaped without a trace. Now we'll count the number of people. Whichever area has 1 less slave means that the person in charge of that area is involved in the reselling." The law enforcer's expression was resolute. His attitude toward this matter was unusually tough. Even if all the slaves stopped working for a day, they had to find the fish that escaped the net and the supervisor. At that moment, Xianyin's face almost collapsed. Her heart was beating wildly, her mind a mess. She did not pay attention to anything else. "We will start the investigation now." 100 law enforcers spread out to investigate immediately. Their actions were swift and experienced, and they could investigate a large area in half an incense stick's time. For example, the small vegetable garden that Xian Yin was in charge of could be determined by the law enforcers taking a look. Seeing the law enforcers approaching one by one, Xian Yin's heart was filled with despair and regret. If she was given another chance, she would never be greedy. However, there was no medicine for regret. Vegetable garden number 4, we'll start the roll call now. The black-robed law enforcer walked in front of Xian Yin, his expression extremely cold. Qin Bu-er, here. The slave whose name was called immediately replied. Zhang Kongyu, here. Kai Sen, here. The names were called one by one, and after a while, the names of more than a dozen slaves were all called. The last one was Suyu. Xian Yin had already closed her eyes in despair. Her heart was filled with incomparable bitterness. Suyu, the law enforcer shouted. Here. However, to Xian Yin's surprise, someone actually replied. When she turned her head to take a look, she saw that Suyu was leaning against a hoe. His whole body was covered with dust, and it seemed like he had been working here for a long time. What was going on? Xian Yin clearly remembered that before the enforcers came, there was no one there. When did Suyu appear? How did he pass through the sealed staircase and come to the lower floor from the upper floor? The law enforcement officer raised his eyes and looked at the portrait on the roll book in his hand. He nodded and said, Vegetable garden number 4's name is correct. Pass. After saying that, he immediately rushed to the next area. Xian Yin's body was completely paralyzed. When the law enforcement officer walked away, she completely collapsed on the ground, unable to move. My lord, are you all right? Suyu walked over and asked kindly. Xian Yin only just realized what was going on, and she hurriedly transmitted a message to Suyu. What happened? Suyu replied, I don't know why, but the faction checked the goods of this transaction, and the third steward took action personally. I was lucky enough to escape. I'm asking, how did you pass through the upper floor to the mine below? Xian Yin's eyes were filled with deep suspicion. With her cultivation of the Yellow Path, master of the great venerable realm, it was impossible for Suyu to appear in the vegetable garden without her noticing. After I escaped, I came to the mine in time before it was sealed. Seeing that the situation was not good, I immediately showed myself, Suyu said, half-truthfully. Before he returned to the faction, the third steward had informed the faction to seal the entrance and exit of the staircase. He could directly go down to the mine from the upper floor because of the space domain. Is that so? Xian Yin thought for a moment and wondered if she had been too nervous just now to notice Suyu's return. After thinking about it, this was the only possibility. Phew! You're smart and we dodged a bullet. Xian Yin heaved a sigh of relief. Suyu smiled and discreetly stuffed a space storage device into her hand. Fortunately, I didn't fail you. Please check and accept it, my lady. The latter glanced inside and looked satisfied. You really didn't let me down. She was very glad that she had entrusted this task to Suyu. If it had been other slaves, they might not have been able to dodge the bullets so cleverly, and she would have been killed. You can do some easy work this month, Xian Yin said, feeling much more relaxed now. Suyu nodded and went back to work quietly. Xian Yin looked at his back, and an indiscernible light flashed in the depths of her eyes. The law enforcers went to great lengths to search for several days, but they couldn't find any fish that had escaped the net. In order not to delay the mine, they had to give up. In the following days, Suyu was quite relaxed. He worked in the day and secretly dug out the giant 9 underworlds crystal at night. Time passed in a flash. A month passed. After 2 months of hard work, the giant 9 underworlds crystal that was hidden deep underground was finally dug out. It finally revealed its true appearance. At first glance, it was a giant crystal with a slightly darker purple color. Compared to the 8th grade 9 underworlds crystal, its interior was slightly turbid. Coupled with its huge size, the deepest part of it was extremely blurry. However, Su Yu could still vaguely see the outline of a creature the size of a puppy in the depths of the 9 underworlds crystal, but he didn't know what it was. What is that? Su Yu was delighted. Could it be another 9 underworlds crystal? He tried to dig out the giant 9 underworlds crystal. After weighing it in his hand, he found that it weighed at least 500 pounds. Coupled with the fact that there were foreign objects in it, even if it was a relic of the lowest grade, the price of the 9 underworlds crystal could be doubled. If he exchanged it in the faction, he could exchange it for at least 10,000 time crystals. If he exchanged it with the Golden Masked Lady, he could exchange it for 20,000 or even more time crystals. 20,000 time crystals should be enough for him to issue a reward for finding the sinful Lady Palace in all the factions at the same time. However, the Golden Masked Lady was almost caught by the 3rd deacon this time. She should know that the next time and place for the transaction has been obtained by the Greater One faction. The Golden Masked Lady can't go there again. Su Yu frowned slightly. In this way, his way of obtaining time crystals was temporarily blocked. I need to wait patiently, Su Yu said to himself. Right at that moment, the 3rd deacon descended upon the mine again to hold the monthly drawing of lots for post. Serene walked over and handed a jade pendant to Su Yu. She said regretfully, "It's a pity that my privilege can only be used once a year. Otherwise, I could have kept you here. This is my token, take it." Su Yu was puzzled. "I don't dare to take your token." "Just take it." Serene stuffed it into Su Yu's hands. "It just so happens that my supervision task has been completed. Next, I will return to the faction above to train for a few months. If you have the chance to go up, hold this token and look for me in the Phoenix domain. I have an important matter to cooperate with you. If it succeeds, you may be able to turn from a slave to an official member of the Greater One faction." To Su Yu, this was not attractive at all. So what if he became a member? He didn't intend to stay in the Greater One faction for a long time. As long as he got the information he wanted, he would leave immediately. "Thank you, my lord." Su Yu cupped his fists and accepted the token. "Go and draw the lots." Su Yu left quickly and went to draw the lots. This time, there was no external help. As expected, he was not lucky enough to draw the vegetable garden. He drew the mining position in the 9th mine. He would start working tomorrow. After several months in the mine, Su Yu already knew that the soil in the mine was much harder than that of the vegetable garden. Therefore, the newcomer who lived next to Su Yu would be exhausted every day. As such, the special hoe that Su Yu had bought might not be of much use at all. When the vegetable garden task was completed, the sky was still dark. Su Yu immediately went to the tool hall on the upper level. "I want a shovel with 100 time crystals." Su Yu still disguised himself perfectly. Hearing this, the shopkeeper could not help but stare at Su Yu from head to toe. 100 time crystals to buy tools? How could a slave have so many time crystals? It was impossible. He could not help but start to guess that the slave in front of him was actually a member of the faction who deliberately disguised himself as a slave. After getting the shovel, Su Yu immediately returned to the mine. What slightly surprised him was that he saw Lao Jin enthusiastically telling something to a newcomer. "This old Jin is a little too enthusiastic," Su Yu thought to himself as he observed the situation. The next day, Su Yu arrived at the 9th mine. What surprised him was that his neighbor, the young man, was also at the 9th mine. "It's you?" The young man recognized Su Yu and smiled bitterly. "Looks like you've used up all your energy. You actually drew the 9th mine." "What do you mean?" Su Yu glanced at the mine. Other than being the deepest of all the mines, it was no different from the other mines. The young man shook his head. "A month ago, our previous supervisor, Li Yunmei, was beheaded for reselling the 9 Serenities crystal. A new supervisor came in, and he is much stricter than the previous one. If anything goes wrong, he will beat people up. All the slaves in this mine have been beaten up." "Brother, you're on your own." Su Yu was stunned. Having learned his lesson, the new supervisor naturally did not dare slack off. If that was the case, his luck was indeed not good. Chapter 2478. Suyu turned his head to take a look. It was a boorish man with a full beard. He was sitting on an old-fashioned wooden armchair, and his tiger-like eyes were staring at them. The youth trembled in fear, immediately picking up his shovel to dig. Suyu was about to follow, but the brute pointed his whip at Suyu. "Newbie, come here." The people in the 9th mine hadn't changed much, so when Suyu appeared, he immediately recognized him. "Sir, what are your orders?" The brute pointed his whip at the deepest part of the mine. "Your mission is to dig 10 feet deep in 3 days. If you fail, humph." Smack! His leather whip struck the ground fiercely, making an incomparably ear-piercing explosive sound. "I understand." Suyu picked up the ordinary shovel and walked over. As he passed the youth, he looked at Suyu sympathetically. "Brother, bear with it. This is the new supervisor's method. Every one of us has been treated like this before. Giving the slaves impossible tasks, then taking the opportunity to punish them, quickly establishing his authority. This method was not brilliant, but it was very effective." Suyu nodded, walking to the deepest part of the mine. This was also the deepest place in the entire mine. Suyu stood in front of a giant rock mountain. He tried to dig with the ordinary shovel, but it did not even leave a shallow mark. "It can't be." Suyu was stunned. He had long heard that the soil in the mine was much harder than the vegetable garden. But how could it be so hard? To dig 10 feet deep with an ordinary shovel would take more than a month, let alone 3 days. Luckily, Suyu had bought a special shovel. During the day, he would use an ordinary shovel to knock and knock as though he was doing it. When night fell, he would use the special shovel. Ding! With a shovel, the hard rock was dug out like mud. "It's pretty easy," Suyu said with a slight smile. The next day, the brute came to the mine with his hands behind his back, ready to urge the slaves to carry out the day's work. But when he arrived, he saw a group of slaves gathered in the deepest part of the mine, all exclaiming in admiration. "Miracle! What a miracle! Brother Su, how did you do it? What's the trick?" "That's right. When you left yesterday, you didn't even dig an inch. How did you manage to dig 3 feet in one night?" The boorish man frowned and walked over with his hands behind his back. He shouted, "Out of the way!" The group of people stepped aside, revealing the strange mine. The boorish man raised his brows, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. He then looked at Suyu and asked, "Did you dig it?" "If not," Suyu asked, "other than him, could it be that there was someone else helping to dig it out?" "Impossible. How did you do it? Speak." The boar glared angrily. What he wanted was not Suyu's rapid mining progress, but to intimidate him. "Lord, I'm only in charge of mining. If I feel that I'm digging too fast, I can slow down. Of course, I will report to the sect." The supreme sect only wanted the slaves to be more efficient. Who would dare to order the slaves to slow down? The boorish man stared at Suyu coldly. After a long while, he bared his teeth and said, "Newbie, you probably don't understand your current situation." Suyu's expression was indifferent as he said, "You don't have to worry about my situation." As he spoke, he continued to mine without any expression. "Humph!" The boorish man gave a cold grunt. "Just you wait and see." There was still a long way to go. A mere slave dared to provoke him. He really didn't know how to spell the word death. Suyu did not care. He took the scroll and prepared to return to the resting room, waiting for the 9 Serenity's evil wind to arrive before leaving. Unexpectedly, the young neighbor knocked on the door and said, "Brother Su, I'm here to learn from you." Suyu hesitated for a moment, then invited him in. "Brother Yu is overthinking, I was just lucky." Suyu could not be bothered to explain further. The neighbor in front of him was called Yu Xiangwan, also from a small and remote region world. "Is that so?" Could it be that Brother Su is not afraid of the 9 serenities? Evil wind, and often goes out in the middle of the night is also luck? But unexpectedly, Yu Xiangwan's bitter expression changed, and she suddenly said in a mysterious tone. Su Yu's eyes were calm, only looking up to see if the stone door was closed. I have poor eyesight, I didn't see that Brother Yu is the one hiding his abilities, Su Yu said indifferently. Shreds of obscure mysterious energy quietly gathered in his palm. If the other party dared to threaten him, he did not mind killing him. In terms of hiding your abilities, how can I compare to Brother Su, who has mastered the space and life domains? Yu Xiangwan said with a faint smile. Every day, he would look tired and return to the resting room to sleep, but in reality, he had the means to observe the situation outside. He could even see that Su Yu had mastered the life domain. As for the space domain, he must have noticed that Su Yu had used it when he escaped from the law enforcers. Brother Yu, I don't think you came tonight to compare who has hidden more abilities, right? Su Yu said meaningfully. Yu Xiangwan laughed, his temperament suddenly changing, his expression awe-inspiring. Of course not. I came because I want to cooperate with Brother Su. Su Yu remained calm. Yu Xiangwan said, how could someone who has mastered the space and life domains be willing to be a slave for life? You mean? Yu Xiangwan said, what I mean is, we should not be willing to be mediocre. We should seek to escape from this place, at least until we become the gatekeepers of the Greater One sect. It was yet another meaningless reward for Su Yu. I'm not interested, Su Yu said straightforwardly. But Yu Xiangwan seemed to have done his homework and chuckled. Even if you're not a gatekeeper, don't you care about the news of the Sinful Lady Palace? Su Yu's pupils finally shrank. You know. Of course not, Yu Xiangwan said. Yu Xiangwan said, but I know that for official disciples, if they have enough time crystals, they can use the Tai Haotian mirror once. If even the mirror doesn't know where the Sinful Lady Palace is, even if you put up a bounty for all 344 sects in the entire realm of dreams, no one would know. Tai Clear Sky Mirror? This mirror can only be borrowed by people with the status of Hall Master and above in the Greater One sect. The amount of time crystals needed is also an astronomical figure. Yu Xiangwan did not hide anything and said honestly, if you have the confidence, you can try to be promoted to the position of Hall Master. If you have other plans, just pretend I didn't come today. These words caused Su Yu to sink into deep thought. If what he said was true, the Tai Clear Sky Mirror could search the heavens and the earth, which was far better than the bounty. Then his plan had to be slightly changed. At least, he wouldn't have to wait for the person in the know to take the bounty. Let me think about it. Su Yu did not agree immediately. Yu Xiangwan showed a hint of relief. If Su Yu agreed immediately, he would doubt Su Yu's sincerity. Since he was considering it, it meant he was tempted. After sending him off, Su Yu waited for the 9 underworlds' evil wind to blow and immediately went to the mine to continue digging. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. Finally, the next day, he completed the task of digging 10 meters deep as promised. The boorish man could only stare at him coldly, but could do nothing. When the day's work was over, Su Yu immediately went to the upper level. After spending a time crystal, he successfully entered the library and flipped through the historical materials of the Greater One sect. After searching, he did find information about the Tai Clear Sky Mirror. The description was exactly the same as Yu Xiangwan's. It's true. Su Yu thought for a long time. Seeing that it was still early, he immediately rushed to the Phoenix domain where Xianin was. With the token, the guard of the domain informed Xianin for him. Before long, Xianin came out with a face full of joy and said, "It's great that you can come, follow me." She led Su Yu into the Phoenix domain. The people who lived in the Phoenix domain were all female gatekeepers of the Greater One sect. There were very few males. The appearance of a male slave, Su Yu, made many female gatekeepers who passed by frown. Under Xianin's lead, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan came to a pavilion. In the pavilion, Xianyin poured tea for Su Yu enthusiastically. Su Yu went straight to the point. My lady, may I ask what the cooperation is? Since he wanted to cooperate with Yu Xiangwan to become an official gatekeeper, he might as well ask Xianyin what kind of cooperation she was referring to. Xianyin set up an isolation spell around the two of them, then said carefully, in view of the fact that there were people from the faction who wantonly sold the faction's 9 underworlds crystals, the faction has decided to send a group of troops to the Dark Moon tribe a month's journey away. That Dark Moon tribe is most likely the place where those traveling merchants stay. Su Yu thought for a moment. What does this have to do with our cooperation? If you can make a contribution in the process of killing the Dark Moon tribe, the lowest reward is 100 time crystals. If you can make a great contribution, you can successfully become an official gatekeeper. Xianyin's eyes were filled with anticipation. She looked at Su Yu and said, according to what I know, the faction will send some slaves to cooperate in the battle. As a gatekeeper, I have the right to recommend a gatekeeper. Su Yu's expression was calm. Then what does my lady want me to help you with this operation? Kill the traveling merchants. Xianyin's eyes flickered. Since you have seen the traveling merchants, you should know that they have an unusually large reserve of time crystals, right? I recommend you to join this operation, but in exchange, you have to help me kill a traveling merchant, Xianyin said. The traveling merchant's time crystals belong to me, and the credit belongs to you. I get the time crystals, and you make a great contribution to become an official gatekeeper. We will both benefit, how about that? It sounded wonderful. Unfortunately, Su Yu did not believe a single word of her words. Why should she give the credit for killing the traveling merchant to Su Yu? He could get the time crystals and the credit at the same time. Wasn't that good? He did not think that Xianyin was such a generous person. On the contrary, she was greedy for money. She had once almost whipped Su Yu to death in order to snatch a pound of 8th grade 9 underworlds crystal. Could such a person be trusted? If you agree, I will recommend you to the faction now. Then, from now on, you will not have to mine for the time being. You can stay in the upper level until the day we set off, Xianyin said. Su Yu thought for a moment, then said, My lady, please give me a night's time to consider. After all, this is a serious matter. All right, I will wait for your reply tomorrow night, Xianyin said straightforwardly. She personally sent Su Yu off the Phoenix domain. As she watched Su Yu enter the lower level of the mine, the smile on her face finally disappeared. Chapter 2479. Su Yu returned to the mine. Before the 9 underworlds' evil wind arrived, Su Yu quietly went to Yu Xiangwan's resting room. I knew Brother Su would come. Good wine has been prepared. Yu Xiangwan sat in the room. The table was already filled with good wine and dishes, waiting for Su Yu's arrival. Su Yu looked at him profoundly and said, Brother Yu, can you tell me the details of the collaboration that you mentioned? Brother Su, you'll know when you see it. Yu Xiangwan was prepared. He took out a mysterious scroll. He then passed the scroll to Su Yu. Su Yu opened it, closed the scroll guiltily, and returned it to Yu Xiangwan. As expected, the content was exactly the same as what Xianyin had said. Both of them proposed cooperation at the same time. Who should he choose? This is a top-secret mission issued by the faction. Yu Xiangwan smiled mysteriously. Before Brother Su makes a decision, you can look at one more thing. He took out another scroll. The difference was that this scroll was engraved with 9 very special seals, which were extremely sturdy. If one didn't have a specific method to open the seal and only used violence, the scroll would be destroyed for no reason. However, Yu Xiangwan was holding a small needle that was specially made. As if she was unlocking a lock, she easily unlocked all the seals. Su Yu took a deep look at Yu Xiangwan when he saw how she undid the seal. This person was not simple. If he was not mistaken, that seal should be the 9 divine seals unique to the Greater One sect. It was created by the founder of the Greater One sect and had been passed down since the beginning of this era. Until now, no one had successfully opened it. Yu Xiangwan had not been in the Greater One sect for long, but he had already broken the seal. If news of this got out, the entire Greater One sect would be shocked. I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Su. These are just some small tricks that can't even be shown in public. They can't be compared to Brother Su's 2 supreme domains. Yu Xiangwan smiled and pushed the scroll over. Brother Su, look at this. Su Yu opened it and frowned. Both scrolls came from the Greater One sect, but the contents were very different. The former was a group of people invited by the sects, including slaves, to go and destroy the tribes. However, this top-secret scroll with a seal on it said that they would dispatch a group of slaves to attract the attention of the traveling merchants in the tribe, while they would dispatch another group of people to create a diversion and outflank the merchants from the front and back. Does Brother Su understand the intentions of the Supreme Sect? Unknowingly, the smile on Yu Xiangwan's face had disappeared and was replaced by a hint of coldness. The Greater One sect is sending us to our deaths. Su Yu's gaze turned slightly cold. He had long felt that Xianyin was a greedy person and would not be so kind as to help him become an official goalkeeper. As expected, not only did she not have such intentions, she even harbored malicious intentions. Her intentions were truly deserving of death. Brother Yu, even though you know that it is a trap, you are still prepared to jump into it? Su Yu asked thoughtfully. Yu Xiangwan shook his head and sneered. Do you think I'm the kind of person who can be trampled upon by others? Don't worry, I have a plan. Su Yu looked at her. His mind had already come up with a total of 9 possible solutions, but he did not know which one Xiangwan would come up with. To tell you the truth, Brother Su, back in my hometown, I am somewhat proficient in the art of setting up a trap. Yu Xiangwan chuckled, a hint of arrogance in his expression. In my plan, this time, I want the Greater One sect to go for wool and come home shorn. I also want the 2 of us to be freed from slavery and become official goalkeepers. He was full of confidence and spoke mysteriously. Little did he know that Su Yu had already grasped what he was thinking in his heart from just a few words. Wasn't it just to inform the tribe of the truth before they attacked, so that they would seriously guard against the enemy behind them? Then, he could reduce the pressure and reap benefits from the chaos? This was the lowest level of strategy among the 9 strategies that Su Yu had thought of. He had an even more perfect strategy. However, seeing that Yu Xiangwan was beaming with joy and was exceptionally confident in himself, Su Yu smiled without saying a word. He was too lazy to give any advice. When the time came, he would secretly point him out. The 2 of them hit it off and reached an agreement. The next day, it was a new day of labor. Su Yu had successfully completed the 3-day task. He could not make things difficult for Su Yu, so he tried to do something bad again. Su Yu, you don't have to mine anymore today. You just need to transport these ores to the warehouse, the boorish man ordered. Transporting ores was not tiring work and was much easier than mining. However, that was under the premise that no one had tampered with the ores. If the ores were missing when they were transported to the warehouse, they would be severely punished by the faction. A light punishment would be an extension of the slave's life, and a heavy punishment would be death. This Lord Supervisor did not have any good intentions. Hurry up and go. The boorish man cracked his whip. Su Yu looked at the cart of ores without batting an eyelid. Each cart of ores weighed a standard 10,000 pounds. However, this cart was missing a full 1,000 pounds. With such a large amount of ores missing, it would be strange if Su Yu was not immediately arrested when he really arrived at the warehouse. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well today and do not intend to do any labor. However, to the boorish man's astonishment, Su Yu directly refused. The boorish man could not believe it. Su Yu had been in the mine for at least 2 months. Did he not understand the consequences of being lazy? A lazy person would not have the time to crystallize. Without the crystals, he would definitely not survive the night. Suyu, the faction will not force you to work or not, but in view of your words and actions, there will be no more time crystals for today. Think carefully, the boorish man said. Suyu shrugged his shoulders, hands behind his head, and walked slowly to the lounge. You're courting death, the boorish man said sternly. He did not know that Suyu had more time crystals than him. Even if he died, Suyu would not. You don't have to worry about me. Suyu ignored the warning and returned to the lounge, causing the slaves who had suffered at the hands of the boorish man to secretly applaud. This time, the supervisor's prestige had been swept away. However, they were very curious about how many more time crystals Suyu had. He actually dared not to work? There's still a lot of time, let's play slowly. Humph. The boorish man's eyes were filled with a strong murderous intent. In fact, the reason why Suyu dared not to work was that he did indeed have a lot of time crystals. Secondly, almost as soon as Suyu's foot left, a disciple of the law enforcement tribunal rushed over, holding a scroll and shouting, "Step forward." Suyu, Yu Xiangwan, Zhao Feng, Yuan Chang in the lounge. Suyu opened his eyes slightly and murmured softly, "I can finally move my hands and feet." He had been in the 8-star civilization for more than 2 months, but had never had a chance to fight. Now, perhaps it was time for him to fight. The group of people came to the upper level, and there was a special guard explaining the mission to them. You are all outstanding slaves recommended by the supervisor, and you have the ability to fight from a distance. The person explaining was the master of the Hall of Mission. He gave each of them a space storage device. There were 30 time crystals, rice to replenish the Path Master's strength, and a map of the vicinity of the Greater One sect. You will set off immediately in 5 days. At that time, you will be accompanied by 10 disciples of the faction. The Master of the Hall of Mission said. From what we know, there are less than 10 Pathmasters in that tribe. With your strength, you can completely annihilate them. 10 disciples and your 20 slaves are more than enough to annihilate the other party. Now, all of you rest where you are. We will set off in 5 days. After settling them in a domain, the Master of the Hall of Mission left. Everyone, I am Yun Lanfeng from the Withered Cloud region. A young man with long blue hair and 3 eyes stood up. His eyes were as cold and sharp as an eagle's. As you all know, we will be facing a group of tribesmen with unknown strength. Yun Lanfeng did not get carried away by the master's words. He said cautiously, "We have gone through many hardships to come to an 8-star civilization. It is best to be cautious." Many young men nodded secretly. To be able to become a peak figure in their respective regions, their brains were naturally not too bad. "Just tell us your intentions. None of us here are stupid," a quick-witted girl said. Yun Lanfeng nodded and stretched out his palm. He slowly released his powerful late-stage Great Venerable cultivation. "We must stick together and not be scattered like sand. We need a leader to make a decision," Yun Lanfeng said. "I am not talented, but I feel that I can take on this heavy responsibility. If anyone is dissatisfied, we can fight it out with force." No one refuted him. They were alone and weak. Unity was the best way out. If there was an objection, who would be the leader? In this mission, the decision-maker would obviously have more advantages and get more credit. This was related to breaking away from being a slave and becoming a goalkeeper. Who would be willing to give up the position of leader? "Let me test you." The clever girl who had spoken jumped out. Her cultivation was also at the late-stage Great Venerable realm. Yun Lanfeng nodded slowly. "All right. Be careful." Swoosh. The third eye on his forehead suddenly opened and shot out a corrosive black light. The girl was not simple. She took out a string of bells with one hand and shook it lightly. Instantly, the attacking black light twisted and flew past her head. Yun Lanfeng himself was also affected by the sound. His eyes showed a moment of confusion. "Go!" The girl took advantage of this opening. An emerald-green poisonous snake flew out of her sleeve and bit Yun Lanfeng. At this critical moment, Yun Lanfeng's body shook. All his clothes were shaken off, revealing a body that made people's scalps go numb. Below his neck, his entire body was covered with pitch-black eyes. At this moment, they all opened their eyes and shot out hundreds of black lights towards the heavens and the earth in all directions. The attacking poisonous snakes could not dodge and were pierced by the black light. Ding ding ding! The girl shook the bells again, but because there were too many black lights, no matter how much she twisted, she could not avoid them. Helpless, she could only jump back and sigh. I admit defeat. Yun Lanfeng's body retracted the black light and looked at the crowd proudly. Several youths at the late stage of great venerable realm who were eager to try hesitated for a moment before finally withdrawing their battle intent. Yun Lanfeng's strange eyes were indeed troublesome. They might be able to deal with him, but their chances of winning were not high. Moreover, they would expose themselves. What a ruthless character! Yu Xiangwan's lips curled into a smile as she spoke to Su Yu. Su Yu nodded without batting an eyelid. You could say so. He is a Xian Dao master who has hidden himself well. Others could not tell, but how could he not detect his opponent's true cultivation? It was really Xian Dao master. But like Su Yu, his cultivation was hidden very well. Chapter 2480. Yu Xiangwan's eyebrows twitched as he looked at Su Yu in surprise. He thought he was the only one who could tell. He didn't expect Su Yu to regard him as highly. Since no one has any objections, then from now on, I will make all decisions, Yun Lanfeng said. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan looked at each other, and stood up at the same time, leaving the small circle of 18 people. The two of them had a tacit understanding not to tell the other about the top-secret notice from the faction. If they told them now, they might not believe it, and if the news was leaked, the Greater One sect would change their strategy. They could only wait until they were about to attack the tribe to remind them. What do you two mean? Yun Lanfeng looked over, his eyes deep and cold. Yu Xiangwan said indifferently, I act alone and don't listen to anyone's orders. Yun Lanfeng sized Yu Xiangwan up. The cultivation level she displayed was only at the heaven realm, far below Yun Lanfeng's. Our fates are linked, you have no right to back out, Yun Lanfeng said bluntly. Yu Xiangwan turned around and walked to another corner, expressing her attitude with her actions. Humph! Yun Lanfeng snorted, a black light shooting out from the eye on his forehead toward Yu Xiangwan's back to teach her a lesson. But Yu Xiangwan did not dodge, allowing the black light to hit her. There was an uproar among the slaves. Not resisting an attack from a later stage great venerable was tantamount to seeking death. But what surprised everyone was that the black light shot into Yu Xiangwan's back, like a clay ox entering the sea, without any movement. I can finally rest. Yu Xiangwan leaned against an ancient tree as if nothing had happened, massaging her legs. Mining every day is exhausting. This scene caused the pupils of all the slaves to shrink. She had taken a blow from Yun Lanfeng and was still unscathed. Was he too powerful, or was he just too talented? It should be the latter, right? Only Su Yu stared deeply at Yu Xiangwan, reserving his opinion. He could not see through Yu Xiangwan. Seeing how strange Yu Xiangwan was, Yun Lanfeng narrowed his eyes and gave up on forcing her. If he could not force her, his prestige as the leader would be greatly reduced. What about you? Yun Lanfeng stared at Su Yu. Su Yu folded his hands in his sleeves and said indifferently, the same. What he meant by the same was obviously the same as Yu Xiangwan. Sure. However, you'll only have the right to say these words if you survive a single strike from me. The hundreds of eyes on Yun Lanfeng's body that had just been shut opened once again. 100 rays of black light covered the sky and covered the earth. It was unavoidable. Compared to the sneak attack on Xiangwan, this attack was obviously done with all his strength. He did not want another uncontrollable slave to appear. Many slaves stared at him, wanting to see if Yu Xiangwan would lend a hand. Unexpectedly, Yu Xiangwan was sitting cross-legged on the ground with her left hand propping up her chin. She was looking at them curiously and had no intention of helping them at all. He should know when to advance and when to retreat. A slave analyzed. However, Su Yu's actions exceeded all of their expectations. Su Yu's hands were hidden in his sleeves, and he didn't try to hide or evade them. He just let the hundreds of black lights hit his body. Puff, puff. A series of hitting sounds could be heard, and Su Yu was hit solidly. Unlike Yu Xiangwan, who had absorbed the black light through some strange means, Su Yu had to bear it directly. However, he acted as if nothing had happened. He smiled faintly and said, "It seems that I have the right to withdraw from you." After brushing off the dust on his body, he came to another tree and sat down cross-legged quietly. Yun Lanfeng looked at Su Yu deeply and said, "Then, I can only wish the two of you a smooth journey in the next few days." "Thank you," Su Yu replied indifferently. 5 days was only enough time for them to adjust their condition. The master of the Hall of Missions arrived as promised. Behind him were several guards, including Xianin, whom Su Yu was very familiar with. She smiled at Su Yu as a greeting. "Now, set off immediately." With a command, the 10 guards and 20 slaves left the faction immediately. They rode on a strange flying treasure of the faction and flew forward at high speed. The flying treasure was a carriage made of copper. It was different from the treasures that Su Yu had come into contact with in the past, which all consumed crystals. This item actually consumed 8th grade 9 Serenities crystals. The 9 Serenities crystals can be used as energy? Su Yu thought to himself. He had been in the faction for 2 months, but why had he never heard or seen the 9 Serenities crystals being used on a large scale? The Greater One faction had been excavating them all year round at all costs, so there should have been a huge motivation. However, at the moment, the 9 Serenities crystals did not seem to be of much use. Is there a secret that I don't know about? Su Yu thought to himself. The group of people traveled a long distance. 30 days passed in the blink of an eye. Even though they were very far away, they could see a tribe standing on the horizon. Many shabby houses stood side by side, forming a small town. The destination is right ahead. The master of the hall waved his hand, ordering everyone to stop. He said, "Now everyone will split into 2 groups. One group will attack from the left wing, and the other from the right wing." Under his arrangement, 10 goalkeepers and 20 slaves formed a group. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly. At the moment, everything seemed to be as the top-secret message had said. They were going to be sacrificed. As expected, the 10 guards looked like they were going to attack the left wing. In fact, they would retreat midway, allowing the 20 slaves to attack the tribe without knowing anything. "Yes," the crowd replied. Xianin walked over and encouraged Su Yu. "Su Yu, I believe in you. With your intelligence and wisdom, you will definitely achieve great merits this time. I look forward to your performance." Her expression was sincere and sincere. If Su Yu had not known about her plan, he might have been fooled by her appearance. "Sir, be careful too." Xianin nodded. "You too. Let's meet back at the tribe." Both sides were ready. The master finally said to the slaves, "You must attack with all your might. If you fail the mission because of your poor performance, don't even think about getting the time crystals when you return." They only had 30 time crystals when they arrived. They still needed 30 time crystals to support their hourglasses when they returned. Unless they had so many hourglasses themselves. Yun Lanfeng and the others were shocked and nodded. Both sides moved immediately. The slaves moved quietly to the right wing. The goalkeepers on the left wing also moved quickly. When they moved to an area where neither side could detect them, the group of goalkeepers, led by Xianin, retreated quickly, far away from the tribe. "Hee, a bunch of stupid slaves. Do they really think it's so easy to get the merits? Heaven really needs to pay a tuition fee. This time, we'll let them know that there's no such thing as a free lunch in the sky." A cold smile appeared on Xinin's pretty face. This time, it would be hard for Su Yu not to die. The strong fighters in the tribe were far more than what the mission said. If Su Yu and the others attacked, only death awaited them. There was only one reason why she wanted to kill Su Yu. How could she allow someone else to sleep beside her bed? Su Yu was the only one who knew that she was selling the 9 Serenities crystals. If he didn't die, she wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. In the tribe, a group of merchants, each wearing a mask, were discussing in a house. Jin Yu, because of your carelessness, we've lost our trading channel with the Greater One sect. Tell me, how should we punish you? One of the bronze-masked men said. Only the bronze-masked man was standing. The rest of the people were kneeling on one knee. The man's high status was self-evident. Jin Yu was the golden-masked woman. Her eyes were gloomy and helpless as she said, I'm willing to accept the punishment, Elder Mo. The last time the Greater One sect had discovered their trading, it had caused all subsequent transactions with the Greater One sect members to be interrupted. This matter had alarmed the higher-ups, the Elder Mo, who had personally arrived at the stronghold. Jin Yu had already mentally prepared herself. Fine. The Elder Mo said indifferently, in view of your serious negligence, I will disqualify you from trading according to the rules of the demon faction. At the same time, you will be sent to the demon faction to be punished with 1,000 years of isolation. Jin Yu's face was pale. She had no choice but to accept her fate. I will obey. DDD. All of a sudden, urgent beeps sounded from the waists of the dozens of merchants present at the same time. Jin Yu's expression changed abruptly. Oh no, an outsider has triggered the alarm formation of the tribe. The Elder Mo's expression tightened. He waved his sleeves majestically, and a clear light screen appeared in front of him. On the light screen, a group of youths was rushing over from the right side of the tribe. These are the slaves of the Greater One sect, right? The Elder Mo's eyes narrowed. The Greater One sect has grown up. How dare they send a mere 20 slaves to their death? One of the merchants pleaded, Elder, let me go. I'll take care of everyone in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. The Elder Mo nodded slightly. Be quick. At the same time, Yun Lanfeng hurried away with a group of slaves. They were fully focused, ready to fight with all their might. As they neared the tribe, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan looked at each other. The latter suddenly stopped and raised her voice. Stop, this is a trap. Hearing that it was a trap, Yun Lanfeng and the others stopped and looked at Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan, who were far behind the group. What are the two of you up to? Yun Lanfeng was displeased. Yu Xiangwan said solemnly, This mission is a trap set by the faction for us slaves. They want us to be the sacrificial lambs to attract the attention of the strong fighters in the tribe. The real main force is to create a diversion and attack from the other side. Hearing this, the hearts of the crowd immediately wavered. A load of nonsense. With the mission in front of you, the two of you are indeed up to no good. Yun Lanfeng rebuked without hesitation. Everyone, remember, this is the only chance for us to gain merit and become official goalkeepers. The two of them bewitched us. Didn't they want to gain the upper hand and gain merit? Such petty tricks can't fool us, Yun Lanfeng said rationally and calmly. When the crowd heard this, they felt that it made sense. The two of them had been acting suspiciously from the start. They were indeed not trustworthy. Let's go. Yun Lanfeng led them decisively into the tribe. Seeing this, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan could only sigh. Brother Su, we have already done our best. They are blinded by greed and cannot be saved, Yu Xiangwan said. Let's go, with them attracting the target, we can hide behind them and reap the benefits. Su Yu looked at the group of slaves with pity. Sighing, he retreated with Yu Xiangwan and hid deep within the crowd. Chapter 2481. Not long after, the sounds of fighting could be heard. Yu Xiangwan's eyes glinted. We can reap the benefits immediately. Su Yu was silent, but his eyes flashed with a strange light. Reaping the benefits was a bad plan, and Su Yu did not want to do it. Yun Lanfeng had led a group of strong youths into the tribe. Suddenly, a young woman at the back of the group let out a scream. Everyone turned to look and saw a strange figure emerging from the shadow of a huge rock. Blood splattered everywhere, staining the face of the figure, making him look extremely ferocious. "A bunch of thieves, you want to attack the demon faction's stronghold? You don't know what's good for you." The newcomer threw the dead body of the young woman, his eyes glinting with a cold light. The sudden change had interrupted everyone's plan. They had expected them to attack the tribe by surprise, but the result was the opposite. "What's going on? Didn't you say that there were no detection spells near the tribe? How did we get discovered?" One of the slaves' expression changed, shocked and confused. Yun Lanfeng stared at the person in front of him, his sharp eyes solemn. "Everyone be careful, he is a merchant of the same level as Master Xian." "Master Xian?" Everyone gasped, and all of them felt horrified. The report clearly said that this was an ordinary stronghold. There were only about 10 Path Masters of the same level as the Yellow Path Masters. How could there be a powerful and invincible Master Xian? "Although I don't know what the Greater One sect is thinking, sending you kids here, but since you're here, you don't have to leave." The latter suddenly attacked. In front of Master Xian, the Yellow Path Masters were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Yun Lanfeng clenched his teeth and shouted, "There's a change of plan, everyone scatter and escape." As the decision-maker, he decisively disbanded the group and escaped first. But the direction they were escaping in was the tribe. Such an unusual action immediately attracted the attention of a large number of strong youths. After some thought, they instantly understood Yun Lanfeng's intention. With Master Xian in front of them, where could the Yellow Path Masters escape to? They could only do the opposite and enter the depths of the tribe to capture a few of the tribe's people as hostages. That way, they might have a chance to escape. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Therefore, a rather strange scene appeared. Not only did the group of slaves who were being chased not leave, but they also sped up and charged into the tribe. "Damn it!" Xian Dao Master cursed in a low voice and quickly chased after them to kill them one by one. There were many powerful merchants in the tribe, and there was also a demon elder overseeing the tribe. However, there were also many people from the demon sect whose cultivation bases were not considered high. The consequences of this batch of slaves barging in could be imagined. No matter how hard he tried, more than half of them still managed to barge into the tribe. In an instant, there were sounds of intense fighting and blood-curdling screams coming from all over the tribe. Half of the tribe fell into chaos because of their intrusion. The tribe was only so big, so how could any abnormal movements be hidden from the group of Master Xian Dao and Elder Mo who were in a meeting? Trash. You can't even deal with a few juniors. Elder Mo was extremely dissatisfied. It was one thing for Jin Yu to carelessly destroy the trading channel of the Greater One sect, but the other merchant could not even deal with a few juniors. Go chase after them and finish them off in half an incense stick's time. Elder Mo snorted coldly, "A bunch of trash that can't do anything right. When this old man returns to the demon sect, I will definitely report this to the demon lord." He seriously doubted the ability of the station in front of him. This made all the merchants' faces turn ugly. Elder Mo's authority was frighteningly high. His words carried a lot of weight in front of the demon lord. Everyone's faces turned ugly as they chased after the slaves that barged in. The result could be imagined. Those slaves thought that there were only ordinary experts in the tribe, but they would never have thought that the Master Xian Dao who was chasing after them was only one of them. There were dozens of experts that were not weaker than him. In less than a quarter of an hour, the sounds of fighting had quietened down. Other than Yun Lanfeng, who managed to use his true cultivation base to escape, the rest of the slaves, without exception, were all captured alive or killed on the spot. However, right at the moment this place was about to calm down, right behind the tribe, a large rolling cloud silently appeared. The cloud was close to the ground, and its aura was completely restrained. No one knew how long the cloud had been there, but at this time, it was motionless in a hidden place. In the cloud, there were experts with astonishing auras, restraining their aura, quietly listening to the movements in the tribe. The person in front of them was the unfathomably deep Third Elder, as well as several powerful hall masters of the sect. Finally, there were hundreds of the sect's elites, each of them strong and extraordinary, and skilled in battle. Suddenly, there was the sound of intense fighting coming from within the tribe. At the same time, the Third Elder received a message, his eyes flashing. "Move out!" Walala. The cloud layer was suddenly lifted apart, and a large number of experts poured out, like a sudden storm, descending upon the entire tribe, fighting with the merchants that were chasing after the slaves. The latter were caught off guard and hastily responded. This time, the Greater One sect had come prepared, and the number of experts they had far exceeded the number of merchants. It was almost a 2-against-1 situation. The result could be imagined, it was completely one-sided. In just a few breaths, there was a merchant that was killed on the spot. The situation of the other merchants was extremely worrisome as well, and they were surrounded by danger. If this were to continue, then only death awaited them. The Third Elder floated in midair, overseeing the entire situation from above. Seeing that the Hall Masters and the other Xian Dao Masters had quickly suppressed the merchants, and the elite disciples had captured the ordinary members, the entire situation was as smooth as expected. He could not help but nod his head in satisfaction. As for the slaves that had already fallen into a pool of blood, they were completely ignored. The decision to attract the attention of the slaves was obviously incomparably accurate. If they directly attacked, the merchants would definitely be alerted, and if they did not escape, they would be prepared to resist. A group of slaves had attracted their attention, allowing their operation to be exceptionally smooth. Time passed bit by bit, and the group of merchants retreated step by step. Seeing that the plan was about to succeed, suddenly, the Third Elder's eyelids twitched for no reason, his heart beating wildly. There was suddenly a deep chill in his heart. After years of cultivation, the Third Elder immediately sensed that something was wrong, vigilantly looking around. Suddenly, he fixed his gaze on a simple and crude house. Inside the house, a black-robed old man with a bronze mask slowly walked out. Under the bronze mask, there was a pair of eyes that revealed an extremely cold killing intent, and a terrifying aura surged out from the bronze mask old man's body. The Demon Elder was indeed extremely angry. The local station was not doing their job well, and it had already caused him great displeasure. But he did not expect that the Greater One sect would come knocking at his door at this time, and wantonly kill his people. How could he not be angry? "You're courting death." The Demon Elder, who had long been angry, suddenly rolled his eyes, turning blood-red. Demon transformation! The black robe on his body suddenly shattered, revealing an incomparably ferocious body. His entire body was pitch black, and thick blue veins that were like snakes constantly squirming on his body. At the same time, his back moved, and a pair of huge wings that were hundreds of feet wide appeared. Seeing this, the Third Elder's pupils shrank, sucking in a breath of cold air. Demon Sect. Demon Elder. The most prominent characteristic of the people of the Demon Sect was the pair of ferocious pitch-black wings on their back, emitting an astonishing demonic chi. According to the size of the wings, the people of the Demon Sect were divided into different levels. Among them, the Demon Elder's demonic wings were hundreds of feet wide. There were a total of 10 Demon Elders in the Demon Sect. It was said that the lowest cultivation level of the Demon Elder was infinitely close to the Tao Master. The appearance of the Demon Elder made the Third Elder's heart beat wildly in fear. He retracted his aura and hid stealthily, not even daring to breathe loudly, for fear of being discovered by the Demon Elder. At the same time, he sneakily escaped out of the tribe. He did not pay any attention to those hall masters who did not know that a disaster was imminent. In his rage, the demon elder unfurled his 100 feet-long demonic wings, and suddenly flashed. Instantly, the entire heaven and earth were filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls, as though there were tens of thousands of malicious spirits walking between heaven and earth. The many hall masters who were happily capturing peddlers, when they heard the ghostly howls, suddenly felt a sharp pain all over their bodies, as though they were being pierced by needles. Die! The demon elder roared, a powerful sound wave piercing through the thick demonic chi, sweeping across the bodies of everyone present. But when the people of the tribe were swept, there was nothing strange, only the invaders. When they were swept, those who were lightly injured fell to the ground in unbearable pain. Those who were heavily injured died on the spot, and not even a trace of their remnant soul was left. In an instant the entire tribe was covered in blood. The might of the demon sect elder was so great. Even the third steward, who had already escaped far away, was injured. He groaned and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His face was filled with shock. The person in front of him was indeed a demon sect elder, although it was very likely that he was the demon sect elder with the lowest cultivation. But his strength was still so strong that he felt suffocated. Escape! At this moment, there was only one thought in the third steward's mind. The sudden appearance of the demon sect elder had disrupted all his plans, and now he could only escape. Not long after he escaped, he met the mission hall master, serene, and the others who were rushing over. Third steward, we are here to provide support. The mission hall master's face was filled with anticipation. serene and the others who were behind him were also impatient. If they arrived earlier, they would have the chance to kill the peddlers, plunder a large amount of time crystals, and even obtain great merits. The third steward immediately hid the panic on his face and said sternly, "Leave quickly, there is a peerless expert in the tribe." At this moment, everyone realized that the third steward's face was slightly pale and frightened. And he was alone, there was not even a shadow behind him. Peerless expert? The mission hall master was stunned. What kind of mission was qualified for the third steward to call it a peerless expert? Demon sect elder. After saying that, the third steward abandoned them and ran away. His heart was still beating wildly, and he knew that the longer he stayed, the more danger he would be in. However, almost at the same time, a huge shadow streaked across their heads.